of Board of Commissioners for Monday, April 8th, 2019, and it is our practice. We will begin with a moment of silence. Thank you, Jay Farrell. Will you read the pledge?
Would everyone rise for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have your agenda before you. We can have a motion on the regular agenda. Are there any changes?
Madam Mayor, if it would be possible to change our ordinance regulating special events to put it as the first item of old business or new business. No old business, sorry.
Okay. All right. Is there a general agreement with the board that that be the case?
Take the special events ordinance and put it as the first item in front of additional elements on trees, the rezoning request, and the sewer application request.
Hearing no objection, we'll move that item to the first item under old business. Is there a motion to approve the regular agenda then?
Second.
Moved by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by Michael Fiocco. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the regular agenda is approved with that one change. And is there a motion on the consent agenda? It consists of 7 items, 5 of which are calls for public hearings on the 22nd basis. So moved.
Second, I would like to modify the minutes with the couple of comments I had there on your desk.
Yes. Motion by Bette Wilson Foley, seconded by Michael Fiocco with the approval of his corrections on minutes. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. At the end of the consent agenda, we are now to the part of our meeting, which is the regular citizens matters. We have 7 people signed up this evening, and of course we do remember that the public expression period is for 3 minutes for people wishing to speak on matters outside of the regular agenda. I believe all the speakers intend to do that tonight, and so Michael Fiocco will help me with the timekeeping, and we'll call the first person who signed up as Charlie Perkins. You'll come up and state your name and address. That would be excellent. Thank you.
It's really tough to hear back there. I don't know if there's a volume switch. I'm Charlie Perkins. I live at 262 May Farm Road. I'll try to stick to the 3 minutes. Actually, I'm sure I won't go over. I came here 2 months ago, I think now, and spoke briefly. Concern that we want to raise to you, the Town of Commissioners, has to do with the proposed concrete plant that is basically adjacent to our neighborhood, Peterson Village. Again, not to sit here, we want to rezone all of that. We're not looking to do that. But what I would say, through some of my neighbors who will also be speaking, we've heard a lot from door-to-door grassroots of just trying to get more people aware of what this means. And I think the biggest underwriting or overriding thing that most of us want you to take into mind and consideration, and we've also had some good meetings with Jeff Jones, so we want to call out and thank him for his counsel. The decisions on the zoning of industrial happened many years ago by the Town Commissioners approving it, we believe. The idea of Peterson Village becoming a neighborhood was approved by the Town Commissioners to put in people there. Now, again, if we think about basically what we as a community would like, let's try to figure out a way that we can respect the livelihood of our neighborhood, our investments, but as well as, you know, the health and other aspects of living in Potterstone Village today. Again, with, you know, this being something you inherited, right? This isn't your fault. What we're hoping is that we can work together with you to come up with ways to look at creating an appropriate barrier or appropriate lien. I'm not saying that they can't build there, but do they have to build 50 feet from the creek, which is 250 feet from my back deck? I mean, it's those things that if we could think about a greater buffer or ways that we could annex in, if you will, zoning requirements, or not zoning, that's the wrong word, but overall aspects of the town ordinances, that's what I'm getting at. Perhaps that allows for us to, again, work within the guise of what you can or can't do. But again, thinking it through, we're just asking, as this continues to move down a path, does this plant need to be on the 10 acres that's adjacent to 15 homes when there's 190 other acres? And more so, when this happens 18 more times, do we have to fear that the next XYZ facility is going to be 50 feet from the creek? You know, if we can start to set the precedent now, I think it's a win-win for the town, more revenue. It's a win-win for the community. It protects our investment. And it's a win-win for all of us continue to try to progress, you know, the growth of Pittsboro, but in a way that also kind of holds to that small town feel. So I know some of my colleagues, neighbors, are going to probably say some stuff too, but I just want to set that as the guise. And again, anything that we could do one-off just to talk more, we would really appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie Perkins. Youngberger.
Hello, everybody. I'm Youngberger. I live at 726 Bynum Road in Bynum. And thanks for letting me speak again tonight. I'm actually speaking on behalf of my neighbor, David Del Vecchio, and he couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to speak on his behalf. And I believe Commissioner Bonnet's handed you guys all out some papers talking a little bit about the tax revenue from the permit for Mosaic. And my friend David was doing some research and just looking at the specifically the permit and looking at the incomes that are reported, the estimated incomes for the different jobs, whether it's retail or offices and that type of thing. Most of the retail, it looks like, were listed at $42,000 as an estimated income, and so my friend David said he thought it looked a bit high. And I just went around Pittsboro and asked the different restaurants and some of the seeming, you know, the restaurants that are doing well in particular, and said, "Does this seem accurate?" And they mostly just laughed. They said, "No, that's like double of what people make at the restaurant." The owners themselves said, "I don't make that much," and that was the average for all the workers that's listed there. And people who were also not in restaurant business and other types of retail, the owners or the managers said, "No, I make half that." So I just wanted to point that out, that research was done, and that because these developments and Mosaic and the permit was given partly because we're talking about tax base for the town of Pittsboro and how it's going to bring a lot more taxes in, and just to highlight the fact that it seems like, just from a basic little survey around town, that those numbers are much higher than they should be. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Youngberger. Next speaker is Suzanne Davis.
I was awakened by birds on Sunday. In the silent fog outside, cardinals and mockingbirds were chirping in their territorial songs to one another, and then making a display and dancing in the street in front of our house, 446 May Farm Road. It was 6 a.m. In fact, birds of all kinds have been singing in Potterstone Village this spring, and I can't help but wonder if, in our future, we'll be able to hear them over the sounds of a cement factory, or if they will leave altogether due to loss of habitat. It was the birds and fear of losing their song that became the metaphor for environmental irresponsibility in Rachel Carson's world-changing treatise, Silent Spring, published in 1962. I grew up in Winston-Salem in a neighborhood where our parents allowed us to run behind the DVT truck and to play in the cloud of pesticides. As you can imagine, Rachel Carson is my hero. Her famous scientific book brought environmental concerns to the American public. She wrote about the dangerous use of chemicals and was met with fierce opposition by chemical companies. Carson accused the chemical industry of spreading disinformation and public officials of accepting the industry's marketing claims unquestioningly. Unfortunately, this is the mindset that reigns in Pittsburgh today. Out-of-date zoning and actions of state officials have set up barriers whereby industry can profit at the expense of local residents. The developer's choice rule that Commissioner Bonus pointed out to me was passed into 2014 by the North Carolina legislature and has paralyzed our local officials who feel legally bound to approve unquestioningly the building of a cement factory next to Potterstone Village. As I said at the last Town Council Commissioners meeting, cement manufacturing is responsible for 7% of all global carbon emissions, second only to the production of steel and iron. How can this board ignore proven science and approve a new cement plant? At that meeting 2 short weeks ago, Commissioner Fiocco reported that the governor has his eyes on small towns, possibly with future funding for Pittsburgh in mind. There was also at that meeting a report on the Parks and Recreation, the future of Parks and Recreation here. How ironic it is that money that will be wasted on our historic main streets, which are soon to be dominated by cement factory pollution, as well as gasoline stations and a crematorium. It is impossible to reconcile the future plans touted by town leadership with our current reality. I've begun to contact state legislators on these issues, but we need honesty and cooperation from this board now in order to prevent an environmental disaster next to our homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan Davis. Ed Fowler, please.
Hi, Ed Fowler from 86 Windsong Drive, Potterstone Village. Thank you again for giving me an opportunity to speak and address the town folks here on the board and the mayor and other folks as well as the town planner and others. We are handing out right now a petition which, as of recently, we have a combined petition containing 244 signatures from 150 homes, all that are of voting age. We wanted to I will briefly read it. You can read it as stated. Contrary to some of the opinions here, I'm in the role of stating that these folks that signed this petition are opposed and asking the town of Pittsburgh to use any means possible to prevent this concrete plant from being approved. We do not want a concrete plant adjacent to our neighborhood for a number of reasons. Negative impact on the resale value of our homes. Even if just the homes in the perimeter go down in value, it will drive comps down in the area. There are health issues we have talked about time and time again. There are 2 families within 300 yards of this plant that have significant health issues, and if you do some of the research with the articles that have been provided, and I'll provide other articles that are attached here, again, you'll see how particles that are emitted are cancer-causing agents. There have been studies that you can read about, and I hope you do your diligence and read through the attachments that I have there. Just talking about the quality of life, as Susan mentioned, you get up on a beautiful day, and who wants to just be listening to the sound of a concrete plant with the backup horns? And I'm going to bring at a meeting coming up, I already showed it to the town planner, what noise is emitted and what dust particles can do to vehicles in the areas they are adjacent to where I work. The noise issue seems to be one of the hottest issues. There are a number of residents that are immediately adjacent to the proposed property that are already ordering decibel rating items right now, and really there's a lot of sentiment in the community for legal action from the point of view of nuisance if this does go through. I say this because just trying to get people's attention. What we discussed at a recent meeting on the 20th of March with Jeff Jones, towards the end of the meeting, a wonderful compromise was presented that I don't know if you're aware of. I sent an email trying to describe that earlier this afternoon. Please read up on it. It is something that, to make it happen, we have to get the owners of the property, we have to get the owners of Potterstone, we have to get the applicant and town officials involved to make it happen. I think it's a wonderful idea to move it as far away on a property that's still owned by the same property owner from the existing backyards that are there. There is an area that was identified by Jeff at the meeting, and one of the issues would be cooperation and water access. I think that would be the biggest issue to overcome. Please sincerely look at that, because we don't want this to go the route it has been going down the line. When it comes to annexation, there are some questions, again, putting them out there to be answered in email or at any time. Not understanding this annexation to withhold or impose the laws of the decibel ratings within the city the town that we are aware of. I look at it at this point of view. If we are within the town limits and we're taking a decibel rating, why wouldn't those standards apply to us on our property? Not necessarily where they are located if they're outside of the town limits. The other question that came up is, why is this being even proposed through the town if it is outside the town limits? A lot of questions to be answered, but I think the biggest thing is just the definition itself of what M2 manufacturing district heavy industrial is. Accepting those that would be detrimental to adjoining properties excluded from this district are industries which are noxious by their emission of smoke, dust, fumes, glare, noise, and vibrations, and those industries which deal primarily in hazardous products, which we've already talked about half a dozen times about how hazardous these particles can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Gerald Featherstone.
Commissioners, thank you for a chance to speak tonight. I'm here as a citizen. I have some experience, though, what I'm about to talk. I'm going to address you in regards to the tree cover and the Chatham Park issues. Lived here a long time in Chatham County. I am just out of your territorial jurisdiction, just across the Hall River there. And I've been following this along. I haven't spoken except in the early days of this issue at Chatham Park. And I wanted to, after having reflected on it, come to you with a few things that I've thought about. First, let me tell you that I'm a boater for about 45 years up and down the Hall River. I have a lot of experience out there. I have a lot of experience with people who've moved here over the years in this county and come here to Pittsburgh. And we are just obviously conceding the point that is going to rather radically change not only Pittsburgh, but this whole county. But the reason a lot of people came down here to Chatham County and to Pittsburgh, like retire, is because of the ruralness of it. And the fact there's a couple of trees around. People like shade, especially here in this good old southern heat that we've got and all our high humidity. So I'm going to urge you to, on behalf of as a private citizen, because to be honest, I am a member of the Fall River Assembly Board. I am also a member of Cape Fear River Assembly's Board and a couple other environmental organizations. So I'm not unfamiliar with the issues that we're discussing here. I'm also worked years ago as a young man in the development industry. I guess you could say I worked there because I was a carpenter on a couple of housing developments around my hometown of Gastonia, North Carolina, back in the 50s. So I've watched things get built, and I've watched trees get leveled, and I've watched soils wash away and wash into the rivers. In our case here, that river is our drinking water source, better known as the Jordan. So please take these thoughts into mind when you're thinking about what you're going to be doing to your children, your grandchildren, who do choose to stay around here. God bless it, looks like our economy is moving up in such a way that some of them will get to be there, because when I was growing up, I knew I was going to have to go to Yankee Land or somewhere else to get me a good living, because I've got an education. Not bragging, just telling you what I did. But lucked out, managed to stay around here, and it looks like the prospects now are so much better for our kids. So I'm going to urge you to keep this town looking like it is, with a high density of trees. I'm talking about canopy, not just trees. Pardon me, please. But a good canopy of trees, because that's what this city looks like if you look at it from Google Maps or just fly over it. Also, it's a recreation mecca. And a lot of people have come here that first discovered it on the river, by the view of the river. And I look at the master plan that you have here of 2,000 feet from the river for any development, for a buffer zone for the hog, which was designed to keep Jordan Lake, or think about Jordan Lake since it is our water source, to where these emplacements of these new homes are going to be. It'll run a lot of the aspects of the river that people come here for. This is one of the primary stretches of white water in the eastern part of the United States. So you're going to change the character, but do it in such a way that will at least pay homage and remembrance to what Pittsburgh was. Because with this big an issue, it isn't going to be. I realize that we want business for our merchants, and that's going to be there irrespective of what you do on that issue. Because this place is coming, it'll change the tills in every business in this county, and that's great. It'll give people's new homes, but don't throw away that heritage. That's pretty much what I want to say about this issue. The location of the houses here, as they plan to place them, will ruin a recreational asset that's been a big asset for us. The loss of those trees out there will change the character of Pittsburgh, turn it more into Friar Chapel than it will into Pittsburgh. And
Thank you,
to
Joe.
just
Do you wrap up?
That's it. I lost my last train of thought. Oh well, I'm getting old. Please give me an excuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person signed up is John Wagner, and John is just going to submit something by in writing. Is that correct?
Yes, my name is John Wagner, 210 Jessamine Lane, Pittsburgh.
So then if Glenn Kristen would come up, please.
Glenn Chrisman, 236 Mayfarm Road in Potterstone Village. I'm here to speak very briefly about the proposed concrete plant. I just wanted to share a little bit about my story about how I wound up in Pittsburgh. My wife and I were looking for our second home in 2010, and we looked at a number of houses in this area. And when we looked at the particular house that we purchased in Potterstone Village, as soon as we walked around the backyard to see the view of the undisturbed woods and the creek in the backyard, that was it. We were sold. I got to tell you, you take a stroll down to the creek, and it's just maybe a few hundred feet from my back porch, and you don't even feel like you're in town anymore. You don't feel like you're in a neighborhood. It's just beautiful, undisturbed woods, lots of animals, lots of birds, blue herons, everything else back there. And I'm just really worried with this proposed concrete plant that all that might be ruined. So I just wanted to make sure to draw attention to that again. Excuse me, if this comes in, there's going to be three total concrete plants within less than a mile of my house. There's the one on Small Street that's 0.8 miles away. There's the one that's already under construction on the old chicken plant property. And then if this comes in, there's three. And I think that's enough. Like I said, I'm just really worried about the woodlands in the backyard. That's all. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. That is the end of the public expression period. The next matter on the agenda are commissioners and managers' updates. It's ordinarily a time when we talk about what meetings we've been to and tonight I simply wanted to call to the attention of the board. There are two resolutions that have been placed at your desk. They're complex in that they are matters that I believe will take some study. One's regarding the Equal Rights Amendment, the other one is regarding climate change. And so if you would study those, and Brian Grusbeck, if we could place those on the agenda for the next meeting, although it seems like there's already plenty on the next meeting agenda, but I think that some of that can be, we can either continue a discussion or we can vote on the section. So, given that, Brian Grusbeck, if you provided us with an update in our package, and we'll turn it over to you for the manager's update.
I have one question. I'm sorry. First, I'd like to thank Jeff and his staff for working with the Potterstone residents. Has anybody spoken with the developer or the concrete plant managers or any?
We are under review of the plans, and we have met with them. They understand the neighborhood's opposition. I don't think that in recent time, I don't think the neighborhood and the developer or the applicant has connected. At one time, back in the fall or summer of last year, there was some attempts by the developers to get an access or an easement through their property.
Right.
And that didn't materialize. And I don't know if there's been communication with each other since then. But we have told the developer, the applicant, as much as we know, and clearly every meeting there's someone here expressing opposition. We've had that on too. So.
Okay.
They have left more than what's required. So what's enough, I don't know. They have left more than what's required.
Can you say how much they have?
The floodplain goes a good way. So there's an area that they can't go that's quite close to 100 feet or so from the street.
So will that would be protected because of floodplain?
Right.
It becomes strict.
Yeah. So yeah, it's better than it could be. They have moved it a little bit from the original plan. I think what you've heard tonight is wanting to move it even further away. I don't know what disposition of the applicant would be for that. This won't be before you until June, so there's still some time to work things out.
Thank you for your help.
I don't know if you can hear at the back, Jeff Jones said that the matter would not be coming on until June, and so there is some time to work on a solution together, and so that was what he was reporting.
So we're asking for that meeting to take place, but we think that that request has to come from everybody. And I think what Jeff is telling me, it has to come from the Board of Commissioners as well. So that's where that's what we would like to see happen. We would like to have that discussion again with the owner, with the applicant, and have a discussion about it before we wait till June and see what happens.
Is that accurate? We need to.
There's nothing that compels them to meet with any of us until June. We can reach out to the applicant and to the real estate agents, the property owners, their agents, and request a meeting, but we can't compel them to meet. I think what Ed's saying is that it might feel more urgent if the town board were to direct staff to do that.
So moved.
Moved by John Bonnet. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Beth Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'll report that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So I think Brian Grusbeck will give us your update. That'd be excellent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. New Town Hall project. If you guys could look at your calendars right now for the week of April 15th. This is in an effort that I can get all of you at the table at the same time.
So
so I can run it off.
Do you have any time available the week of April 15th?
Yes.
I can do 17 or talking about evening meeting.
If that is the best time. Yeah.
Anytime that week.
I can do 16th, 17th, or 18th.
Me too.
I will not be, I can do the 16th or 17th, but not the 18th.
And you can do 16th, that's right.
So we have,
And 17th?
Either's good with me.
Pardon?
Either 16th or 17th is good with me.
17th is better.
16th, 17th, 18th. It sounds like the 17th is the best one, and that it will include it and be more convenient.
17th would be great. I'll confirm that with you guys tomorrow. What,
At 6 or 7 or what?
when I try 6? Is that too early?
Okay. The town hall meeting with Hobbs at 6 o'clock on the 17th of April. That'll be here. Here,
Let's try it here.
okay.
The power.
We're having a UDO meeting also on the 15th.
Now, that one, the meeting on the 15th, we had discussed at the most recent workshop that we would like to abbreviate that meeting so that the commissioners and I can go to the county commission who are going to be having a meeting that night. I've spoken with the chairman of the county commissioners, and he's going to keep me apprised about discussion that may be going on at that meeting that's of interest to the town board. So regarding the statute, so we may leave that meeting early and go over and join the county commissioners. For the purposes of listening, we do not have legal bearing on the matter, but we certainly feel individually led to attend that meeting.
Thank you very much for doing that. I'll keep the remainder of my comments brief. That's the segue to the next comment was UDO workshop is what Mayor Perry is referring to, and that is currently scheduled for April 15th at 6 p.m. Really kind of up to you and Jeff for how long you want to go on that. So, and then also too, this week there has been scheduled a joint elected board meeting April 11th, this Thursday, 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the New Ag Center, and that's involving the I believe just the county board, Siler City, I believe their elected body is going to be there as well. But I'm not sure if the school board is. Yeah.
Alyssa?
Yes, and Goldman.
Okay. Thank you. Alyssa Bird is organizing that.
And then, again, another segue. It's almost like I planned it. E.G. Gelero. Alyssa and I met with the folks at the space occupied, or we used to refer to it as the old BioX building. Probably you guys that go back further than me would call it something different. And we met with the owners of the company called E.G. Gelero. If you were ever inside, it looks completely different now than probably the last time you've been in it. They have all of those workbench, lab bench materials out. They're taking out some walls. They're in the process of taking out a lot of physical structures that were inside the office area, repainting, getting rid of a lot of the damage that had been incurred from previous processes in the building. For instance, there was an algae growing operation in there at one point in time. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of that. It caused a little bit of rippling and blistering on the paint, and so some of that's going to be cleaned up. And as you can recall from your packet earlier this evening, we did set a public hearing for the next regular board meeting, and that's to begin the CDBG process, which the owners of E.G. Gelero are interested in pursuing. The town would if we move forward with that, the town would essentially act as an applicant for that, with the work done by consulting and able assistance from the EDC, and then whatever help the town can provide on that. But that CDBG project would be critical toward making a lot of the improvements that are contemplated on the outside, mostly on the outside of the building. I believe some work on the inside, but I believe mostly on the outside. So with the new town hall project, I think this is a great opportunity for us to improve and infill space that's adjacent to the new town hall, and probably most importantly of all, both of those projects will feed our historic downtown and will keep our downtown viable and full of all sorts of positive traffic. So I'm definitely looking forward to the work we can be doing on that. With that, I will tap out. Any other questions or comments, please let me know, or we can pick those up later. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there other meetings?
I've got a question for you on looking at our upcoming meetings. May 13th is set budget public hearing. Is that going to have the first draft of the budget?
I think we're planning on giving you the initial draft of the budget at that meeting.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
But the main goal is set the public hearing for the next meeting, where we conceivably we hold the public hearing, and then after the public hearing is adjourned, as we've done previously, we go into the budget if you want to.
Yeah, that'll just give everybody 2 or maybe 3 weeks to review it.
So, and there may be any changes that we make, we'll note. I mean, there could be, as you probably recall from being a veteran of a few of these, there are sometimes some changes that are made to that document, so we'll try to keep you up to speed on that as best as we can. But yeah, you will receive the bones of the initial budget.
So are there other meetings that commissioners have attended since our last get-together, either for EDC or PBA or Main Street or trying to say? Anybody need to report?
I'll be meeting with the EDCs normally, and I did not meet with PBA last time. I need to cover that. Sidewalk, sorry, Main Street, I can give an update. We have 3 facade grants in the works, so that's quite exciting. Looking forward to seeing this through. Looking at Snuffy and Pam's property, and that might occupy 2 facades, being a corner lot. New Horizons, and the third one is not, they don't want to talk about it yet. So, rails went back up, they're painted, they're only lacking the art installation, and I think that will happen November to the middle event, so that's in mid-May. Continue to work with DOT, Kimley Horn, Chatham County, town staff, Greg Stafford, and other property owners on the traffic circle project. Main Street's involved in that heavily. And I just want to offer a hearty thanks to Public Works staff for installing the 3 recycle bins. I happened to see them wrestling those things. They're very heavy. And so I think they did a great job. One of them was located in a spot that wanted to be moved, and they did it, jumped on it. So I think they did a great job, very professional job. Everything looks great. So thank you.
Pass that along.
Yeah, please.
I'll report on the Chatham Arts Council. We held Clyde Fest on Saturday. It had been very rainy the day before, so at the last minute we had, I think, like 20 or 30 bales of straw that we were throwing down to cover up the puddles. But a great turnout, and the kids had a wonderful time, and very positive event for Chatham County. And thank the people of Bynum and the volunteers and staff who worked hard to put that together. And it's nice to brought in people from not only Chatham County but outside of Chatham County. Great turnout.
So saw some folks from Durham, too.
I attended the Chatham Affordable Housing Advisory Committee on April 4th, and we are working steadily on trying to establish a policy in reference to affordable housing in Chatham County, and we are certainly working together, Pittsburgh, Chatham County, and hopefully anyone else who would like to attend those meetings. They are public meetings. They're scheduled the first Thursday of each month, and generally they are at the agriculture building. So anyone interested in coming, and we would appreciate your input. Thank you.
Okay. That moves us into new business. The first matter on the agenda is a preliminary subdivision plat review for Cedar Lane. Thank you, Victoria Baylor, for lead us to it.
Brian. Okay. We have subdivision 2018-05. Orange Communities LLC has submitted a preliminary plat for review. The property is located at the western end of Cedar Lane and is zoned R12 medium density. The proposal is to subdivide 5.97 acres into 6 lots with an average lot size of 41,150 square feet. This subdivision is composed of detached single-family residences, one of which has already been permitted and is under construction. The applicant is requesting a sewer allocation of 2,400 gallons per day. The town subdivision regulations state that sidewalks should line both sides of the street and that new streets should be constructed with curb and gutter. The developer is requesting an exemption from these regulations. The ordinance allows the town board to grant exemptions upon recommendation from the planning board. The planning board reviewed this plat at their meeting on April 1st. The board posed questions regarding the suitability of the existing section of Cedar Lane and the possibility of any further development in the back of lots 3 and 4. Ultimately, in a vote of 6-0, the board recommended approval of the preliminary plat with the requested exceptions. These plans have been reviewed in accordance with the town's applicable development ordinances by the appropriate departments, and staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat with the exemption from the curb and gutter requirement and the exemption from the sidewalk requirement with a fee in lieu of $11,325.
Questions for Victoria for the developer? Well, I'll start. I'd like to ask what was the answer to the planning board's inquiry about whether there would be further lots behind number 3 and number 4?
There will not. It's they were just concerned about it, but the floodplain runs pretty much all the way out. This is the floodplain line, so no development can occur back there.
Was there discussion about interconnectivity between this subdivision, Cedar Lane, into and behind the Walnut Cove project into Rectory Street?
The chairman did ask about that, but it's, I think because of the, I don't know,
It would
it's not
eliminate
really
lot number
feasible.
6 if one was to try to interconnect. But there's a sewer easement already in that area, and it seemed like it was a really, it could be a very appropriate way to interconnect. Otherwise, we're going to end up with lots of dead end streets.
That may be possible. I would have to let the applicant answer your question. It would probably end up taking out one of the lots.
All right, Dash, you want to...
Oh, Mr. Lovelace can answer much better than I can. Thank you.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, I'm Landon Lovelace with North Engineering. I'm a site civil engineer for the project. We hadn't had a whole lot of discussion about connection to Rectory Street. There was a question in addition to the potential for additional lots and connectivity to the west, actually floodplain, which I think Ray was spoken to earlier. As far as Rectory Street goes, I'm not sure what Walnut Cove has back there. I'm not looking at their previously approved plan. My guess is that that's probably open space and some buffer along the property line. I think that it could potentially be an option if Walnut Cove were willing to give up that land, but that's just not something that we had been asked to do or looked at. So we have not.
I'm thinking that we have a stated policy that we would like to have as much interconnectivity between our streets. And so
it looks like Rectory Street would have to go through an apartment complex. There's two buildings that are so tight.
Yeah, I don't know if you can get a street connection between the existing buildings.
well, the little patch of cleared land there is the sewer easement that runs behind it. I walked that easement in front of
Back here?
No, to the east. Yes. And that connects directly with Rectory Street.
So there's a water line, existing water line there, so it was not an easement, so we proposed an easement along the water line. If there is sewer, it does not come up to one side. There is a water line that comes up to Cedar Line.
Well, perhaps it's a water line.
But it was not in an easement, it was just over land, so it's part of our plan, we actually put it in. So I think if you're looking at connectivity here, again, if you come up Rectory Street, trying to get a 50-foot right of way, you'd be looking at potentially taking up the parking and trying to fit the road in between two existing apartments, and I don't know that the 50 feet between them.
Rectory takes a little dog leg off of the map here, so I think what Mayor is referring to is maybe connecting
To the
back.
Sure. And again, that's without looking at the Walnut Cove plan. Obviously, the tree and forest, there is a portion where the water line comes through, but I'm not sure how we would get that property. How you would go on an existingly developed townhome or apartment complex and get that property from there.
Mr. Messick, are you familiar with that area?
Historically, yes, but not in connection with the specifics of this plan. And I don't know where the property line is in relation to the aerial photograph either.
Looking at little lines for actually the sliver of Kiwanis property in between there too.
And the cleared area that you were referring to is what?
I thought it was sewer line, but they're saying it's a water line, perhaps.
So I think, again, this is the back of the Kiwanis property, and this is the rear yard of the apartment complex. And I believe Rectory thinks that dog leg somewhere right here. So obviously coming up in between these units is not an option. I think if you go off the back, you have to take, to meet town standards, 50 feet of right of way. That would basically put that road right at the back of those units. Or you'd have to try to get property from Kiwanis and Walnut Cove.
Well, the town is looking at the back of the Kiwanis property for a park, so for whatever that's worth.
And it certainly was not my suggestion to come through the middle of Walnut Cove. That may very well be a private roadway and parking area. But it was the one to the east. But
so that's also private. That's likely open space for the apartment complex. You brought up, mentioning the fact, and having walked out there a number of times myself, I've seen people walk down there and not walk down there. I don't want to speak for Mr. Dasher, but I would wager that he would be willing to dedicate public access easement on top of that water line easement that we were doing. So if the town does have a park back there and wants to make pedestrian connectivity, we can certainly do that. But I think the likelihood of a vehicular connection is probably slim to none. Just physically, and being able to go back and get property from two adjacent owners, in addition to physically fitting it in there.
maybe can ask for a stub out, just in case in the future there's development back there, but I think it's a stub out.
So if we do a stub out, you can take a 6-lot subdivision and take it down to 4 lots. And it's not economical.
Why 4 lots?
If you have a stub out, you're talking about a vehicular connection and not just a gateway? Yeah, vehicular connection, you have 50-foot right of way. And that would, those 2 lots that are there would be gone.
While we have you, may I ask you to articulate the reason for your request for an exemption with respect to both the sidewalk and the curb cut?
Absolutely. So it's multiple fold. First, the first exemption that we're requesting is for the curb and gutter. If you go down the existing Cedar Lane Street and you go back through that area, even with the nature of the existing development out there, there is not curb and gutter. There's a small section of, I wouldn't even call it curb and gutter. It looks like maybe, and I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure the town didn't put it in, but maybe a homeowner put in a couple of slabs of like monolithic granite that kind of looks like a curb, but it's not really a curb, and it's maybe 100 foot long. Outside of that is the ditch section of road. There's no other curb and gutter. So that, plus even with the natural area in the back, we want to do a ditch section and naturally convey the water via swale down to the stormwater pond, back out to the floodplain area. So that's the reasoning behind the curb and gutter request. And then if you don't have curb and gutter, it's time to put a sidewalk out there, which there's also nothing around there to connect the sidewalk to. If you try to put a sidewalk back behind a ditch section road, it just comes up with, you come up with issues trying to connect it back out to the street. So the two kind of go hand in hand. But he is paying or suggesting that he pay a fee for the sidewalk.
I think that makes sense to not have curb and gutter. It's going to be used for wetlands.
I think typically also if you look at many locations that do have curb and gutter around the street that ends in a cul-de-sac, oftentimes they'll end the sidewalk right at the start of the bulb of the cul-de-sac with a handicap ramp, some way to get on. So if we do grant a pedestrian access easement along that water line, and the town does end up with some connectivity there and finds a way at some point to extend a sidewalk down Cedar Lane, or if Cedar Lane is ever redeveloped, then you could easily put a sidewalk within that 20-foot easement. I think it's very difficult to not have a sidewalk around the bulb of the cul-de-sac, especially if you're back in a rural setting, a smaller setting.
The problem with that kind of thought is that thinking that there's no sidewalk existing on Cedar Lane, to bootstrap on that, to not put sidewalk in this particular subdivision means that the next one that comes is going to do the very same thing. And they're going to say, well, you didn't make them do it, da-da-da.
Well, I think it's not just because there's not an existing sidewalk out there, but it's also the fact that it is a cul-de-sac. It's the ditch section of the road. And, those things are very typical of not putting sidewalks on the ditch section of the road or putting them around the bulb of the cul-de-sac. Again, if the sidewalk ever does come down Cedar Lane, you've got a very good opportunity to come here, put a culvert in the ditch, and make a connection out to the street or extend the sidewalk in your public right of way to the sidewalk. So it's not just, we're not doing it because there's not an existing sidewalk.
That creek is Hill Creek, and there have been people downstream that have been here at this meeting asking us why it is that their properties are flooding or in danger of flooding or whatever, and this is a problematic little stretch of property in here. It's also the creek which overflowed and took out into the area behind the fire station and took out the Pittsburgh Elementary School Road, washed it out. And so your stormwater devices are, could you speak to those and how it will affect the flow of Hill Creek
absolutely. So I obviously am not able to speak to anything downstream. Outside of the obvious that we all know, the fire station and the flooding and the road that got washed out. That's a good bit further downstream, and without having looked at it, I can tell you based on the watershed and the size of it, this development is just a very minuscule portion of that. The runoff that we are treating exceeds what the town of Pittsboro's requirement is. So the town of Pittsboro requires that we contain 1 year, 24-hour storm. This meets that, and then some. It has an increase in, it depends, 2-year storm as well, and there's a small increase in the 10-year, 25-year, 100-year, but only like a 5 to 7% increase. So it's, in essence, storing almost up to a 100-year storm. So it's far beyond what the town of Pittsboro is doing for the last couple.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite make the jump between 1 year and
So for the Pittsboro Falls State requirement, there's multiple agencies that would look at it. The town of Pittsboro's flood prevention ordinance and the state requires it's a 1 year, 24-hour storm. So the dry pond that we have back there meets that and exceeds that by far. There's no increase in the 2-year, 24-hour storm either. When you get into some of the bigger storms, the 10-year, 25-year, and 100-year storm, there is an increase in flow, but it's a small increase. We're not required to detain that at all, but we are, and it's only increasing in a 100-year storm by like 7%. So we're holding a much larger amount of runoff than is required.
Are there any questions for Landon Lovell?
I'm also, as we spoke before the meeting, I'm also very curious about these questions of the possibility of leaving open the potential for connectivity in the future. And I'm not seeing where you go from 6 lots to 4 lots. I am seeing where 1 lot would clearly be impacted. If that proposed 20-foot water line were widened.
If we take 50 feet out of 5 and 6, even if we slap it up against
or could it all go on 6?
It could, but then does that leave enough for 5 to still stay there? Because that water line is not right necessarily up against the property line, and it probably could be, but my guess is that both are gone. And when we're talking about a 6-lot subdivision, 1 lot is 15%.
Yes.
Losing 1 lot makes it economically unfeasible. Losing 2 is certainly worse.
Well, I do think interconnectivity comes in many forms, and I know this area a little bit. I think a cul-de-sac is an appropriate design for this location. You've got floodplain preventing you from going any further with that road. You are, I think, improving the road from existing conditions. I think there's a 30-foot right-of-way right now and a 16-foot road. So I think it does make sense not to overburden that road with additional traffic. I think this is appropriate. I really appreciate the idea of putting a pedestrian way in that water line. And so establishing an easement, one for the water line and everything you need to do with the water line, but also having those greenway rights to that would be great. And I had the same exact thought even for the sewer. And so that would be my request of this project, that it modify the language of the existing sewer easement to include greenway rights. I'm not asking anyone to build a greenway, but allowing it to be built in the future, I think would be a great way to have interconnectivity. It's not all just vehicular. So
we discussed that before the meeting within Mr. Dasher's report.
Okay.
I would recommend if you're going to do joint easements that they are a little bit wider. You would want to get on that.
I think it's a 20-foot you're proposing?
20 foot, typical, I would normally go with 30.
Right.
If you're doing a joint use.
Or we could do 20-foot easement with 10-foot temporary construction easements on either side so that you could build it. But I'll leave that technical issue.
Yeah, and I think the making the sewer easement to the back 30 foot is probably not an issue. I think trying to widen that water line easement out to 30 may be an issue, and if we've got no surface structures in the water line easement, the 21st Street is we can definitely look and just, I'll want to double check and make sure before I over on miles and put my foot in it that we can make that sewer easement 30 foot, but I don't think that will cause any issues.
And I think there's two, one north is up going west,
Yes.
and one running north south.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So exactly. Sure. Okay.
And that's, I mean, adding that additional easement would allow for greater flexibility in locating a trail. And for us, it's a paper exercise and getting inside.
That'd be great.
You're talking about trails. My concern is the Walnut Grove apartment. That is actually, I don't know whether you know or not, generally senior housing. And for me, it's very important for our seniors to be able to have walkability as well. So if there's any way for them to have walkability, to be able to possibly, in case they want to intend to expand that park so that they could be able to walk over there, the ones that are able to. There are also a number of handicapped, yes, disabled child, yes.
When that park is there, that people didn't very much.
Further questions for Landon Over?
As with those modifications, I make a motion to approve.
Moved by Mark Kyoko,
Second?
seconded by John Bonnet, that this section be approved with the stipulations that the water and sewer lines be given extra width.
Greenway rights.
And the greenway rights. Thank you. Those in favor, please indicate by saying.
Would that cover it?
Greenway.
The greenway should connect to because we wanted to connect to Walnut Road. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
The next matter before the board is a rezoning request for 196 Chatham Business Drive. And Ms. Victoria is with us again to O&I, Office of New Business.
Special events in this.
Special events. All business. Who's going to lead us in respect to that?
Madam Mayor, I can get us started. You guys can take it from there. The result of the discussion at the last meeting that reviewed an ordinance for special events in the town of Pittsboro. We were generally in favor of the language that was presented with 2 additions. I included those additions in highlighted portions as developed by Town Attorney Messick on pages 3 and 5. Those additions were to essentially allow for special events to occur throughout the geographic Main Street boundary, as opposed to being just limited to Hillsborough Street, which was previous language. That's on page 5. I believe it was on page 3, not 4, as I said in the memo, that recurring special events known as First Sundays could file 1 application annually, as opposed to however many First Sundays there are throughout the season. The one thing that we don't have cracked right now, and that's, I would leave that to Attorney Messick to expand on, was some discussion that you've had regarding language for the allowance of spirits if they were served or consumed as part of a tasting. So we don't have that language developed as of now, and I don't know if Mr. Messick wants to chime in on that.
Brian, I read that in your memo, but reading the version that I have, it has redefined alcohol sales and consumption. Says, for the purpose of this ordinance, alcohol refers to malt beverages, unfortified wine, and spirituous liquor. So it has included those in the definition of alcohol where before they were absent. So I think that at least does what I think we wanted to occur there. So I think
it wasn't highlighted.
No, it wasn't.
I apologize.
Okay. But I changed it nonetheless.
It's changed.
Okay. So I mean that works for me. That was one of the things I wanted because we do have a special event in mind that uses that. Yeah.
It's all spirited liquor.
Yes. I know.
That sounds like a really bad thing.
So I would just offer this two modifications for 9A. Special events that include the sale of alcohol. I would say the sale or tasting. And for the area, we typically, I think, call the Main Street area the Main Street boundary. So I would just change the word area to be...
How about area boundary?
Sorry?
How about area boundary?
That's fine.
Do you think you're going to have a tasting without a sale?
Yes.
You're going to have a tasting of spirituous liquor without a sale of pure wine?
I do believe it. Well, I believe it's possible.
I won't be there.
There you go. Now we're talking. Free taste. Free taste.
No sale required.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the sale and tasting is not a sale, but okay, so tasting or sale in the first line,
Yeah.
and area boundary in the second, in the last line. Okay.
Sometimes people pay to get into an event, and then the tasting is part of the...
Well, I hope it's not construed as a sale of the product, because I think that's probably not permissible. Off premises, in the middle of the street.
Take it to a party.
The only other concern that I've heard in intervening, actually was just last week, maybe even this weekend, was concern about prohibition on glass. And clearly we don't want glass out on the pavement. The suggestion was, well, wouldn't it be possible to work something out for beverages that are actually served, like wine being poured? That kind of thing. Commissioner Fiocco, have you heard any concerns in that direction?
General concerns about the need for glass.
Yeah.
But recognizing that there is a hazardous situation with it.
Because it needs to be an enclosed, controlled area.
Yeah.
But I see some hand waving in the audience, and I'm wondering if Mayor...
Who's going to clean it up?
If it's served by the person who's given the alcohol, then they can also be held responsible for cleaning it up.
Well, I think ultimately the special event is going to be responsible for any number of expenditures, not least of which is cleanup.
Would we like to recognize comments from the audience? Greg Lewis is asking to be recognized. Greg?
I just want to say I've spoken to the ALE agencies.
Yes, come up.
Yeah, Greg Lewis, Pittsburgh Roadhouse, Main Street. But I've spoken to the local ALE agencies, and we cannot serve the wine at the table. They have to come up to a table where it's being sold and get it themselves. All right. So there will be no wine going around tables being poured, at least for the dinner we're planning for May 19th. They will have to get up from their seats and go get it. All right? Future events, I don't know, but that's the law currently. And it's because we forgive me because the music was loud when he was in undercover and I asked him questions. But it was, we can't tell how many people, everybody would have to have the exact same amount of alcohol. If it's included in the ticket, then everybody has to have the same amount, and you can't regulate it properly by serving it at the ticket. The ABC laws in the state of North Carolina are very archaic, and they are what they are.
You would agree with that means served into a glass?
So we would like to use glass and china, for this dinner. If you tell us we have to use plastic, we have to use plastic. But yes, we would pour it into a glass, a cup, or whatever, and serve it to them this way. We can do beer and wine with a cash bar if you say okay. That's allowed. But liquor, I don't think can be sold by the glass. I think that has to be done by a tasting. All right. As far as the glass and china goes, glass and china is used every day in most restaurants, including Jay's. When it gets dropped and gets broken, it gets swept up immediately. I mean, that's the way it works. So if we were allowed to use glass and china at this event, we will have the means to sweep it up. Most of the volunteers are restaurant folks, so we're not going to leave broken glass behind. That wouldn't be very responsible.
I appreciate that reassurance, Craig. Part of the challenge with this board facing the task of making policy is thinking beyond the individuals in the current relationship. So I guess the question would be directed to Town Attorney. Is there anything specific to clean up in this language or in other associated policies?
Yes.
It's on the bottom of page 3.
Okay.
Plastic is a lot easier to clean up. It's safer. It can't break. Nobody's going to get cut. Nobody's going to step on it. This is going to be in the warm weather. It's going to be in the middle of the street. It's inherently hazardous.
I do want to say this, that if they're going to be serving some of the local spirits and wines here, it comes in glass bottles for the most part, and that would be part of the tasting, would be that people could see what you're drinking, as opposed to serving it out of a plastic pitcher.
But they're going to be in a defined location, a discrete area, not the whole length of the block of the street. You can't go tasting from one end of Hillsborough Street to the other.
It seems like there'd be a way to saying that if it's being served, that they could allow glass.
Well, I'm reading it. It says the service of alcohol to consumers in glass. So I think the consumer has glass, not the services prohibited from the glass container. So that's the way I read that.
Right. I mean, the wine bottle is still going to be in a bottle.
Yeah.
So the glass that the consumer has is going to be plastic, which they make, and they're cheap.
I think it's a good point. I mean, you could say the same thing as for restaurants and now work in Perkins, and the floors are concrete. Glasses get broken all the time, and that's part of what waste do. As soon as their ears are tuned to it, as soon as they are on it.
The restaurants are not streets and sidewalks.
If you took away the wall, I don't see it being different. The Barrington barn with its concrete floor is not a whole lot different than the street. You're still going to have. They're going to be responsible for someone that gets injured, because I'm assuming these places will have. You guys will have insurance.
Event insurance.
You don't want anybody
Main
to
Street.
get hurt.
Main Street has the event insurance. There's a liquor liability insurance, the event insurance. Sure.
Tammy Schwerin, Lorax Lane. There's a couple of different scenarios here. So Greg is talking about putting a sit-down dinner, and that usually requires people paying a lot of money. It's a beautiful event. You kind of really want glass. Something like a festival where people are wandering around, you absolutely want, in my opinion, corn cups or something compostable. So you don't want glass in that situation. So there's two different situations. Long term, you're going to have festivals, you're going to have sit-downs. If you can make a policy to address both, it would be helpful.
Thank you. think that the interest in having an event where in a confined area, defined area, beverages are served in glass with proper care taken, and with the insurance provided, and with the language that we already have regarding cleanup, the liability would be on the organizers in case of injury. Is that correct?
It would be on the town as well. You are trying to insulate the town by having the applicant provide insurance, and that may be the first option, but you would be involved. And you're relying upon a volunteer of a nonprofit organization to take care of your streets and sidewalks.
During a special event.
Yes.
Yeah. Adults, professionals.
And it's the terms of the agreement, and
right.
If they don't do right, they won't get the permit next year.
That's right.
Why can't we just say alcoholic beverages may be served to consumers in glass, paper, or plastic containers, and containers no larger than 16 to an ounce. And just say that, and then in the future, if there's a problem with this, then we can eliminate the glass on it.
If an organizer is going to be responsible for cleaning up glass, and it's like a fair event, we're not going to do glass because there's just trouble to cover glass with that.
So would that mean that paragraph 3, that we would be striking the first sentence? We would have to also change it where it says prohibited.
In 10, prohibited conduct, item C, section C, beverages shall not be sold or distributed in glass containers on public property.
Do you want to prohibit cans as well, or you want to change that too?
I think Mayor was suggesting we strike the first sentence. And then I think what Baldwin's sense would have been, or would be alcoholic beverages may be served to consumers in glass, paper, or plastic containers, and containers no larger than 16 fluid ounces.
Yes, that was your intent. And then under prohibited conduct, we need to have a change there under 10 what?
10C.
10C. We strike that completely. Strike 10C.
10C.
Roman numeral 10 on page 6. Now wait a minute. If Tammy is selling an alcoholic cider that's already in a glass container, that would prevent her from doing that.
That's right.
Does not be sold as
I kind of agree with the mayor on that. It sounds like it says beverage should not be sold or distributed in glass containers on public property.
Right.
That is a right.
If we strike it, then we don't have to worry about it. Then it won't be prohibited.
The one thing I'll mention, and believe it or not, I've been to several rounds on, what do you call them, special events.
Love you.
But if you have glass there, it's going to get broke, it's going to get thrown, and there's going to be accidents. And we really need to think hard and strong about having glass outside on the streets. Really do. That's the only concern, and I understand everybody's comment regarding glass and wine and all like that, but safety, I think, we really should stick to plastic. They make nice goblets in plastic, and champagne glasses and all. And that's just my comment. I do see the need to stay with the plastic.
Well, I think the fact that we would say may is if somebody were to
reach out.
It must not be
Must.
But the fact that it's may doesn't mean that you're automatically approved for glass service. If you have a track record of not doing a good job of that, you still want to have a special event. I think the town would say, yeah, but you're not using glass. You're not using glass.
Well, then in item A3, the must should be changed to may.
Yes, that was, I think, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Board ready?
With those modifications, I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Michael Fiocco.
Second.
Seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Under old business, we now go to item 1, which is Chatham Park discussion of additional elements for tree protection. Jeff Jones will start us off.
Mayor, staff received a request from Chatham Park to have this item on the agenda tonight so that they may be able to hear more feedback on their proposed tree protection element from you all. They have not provided any updates to their element. They just want to have some feedback, some discussion time with you. So they're here and have a conversation.
Smith, are you going to be with us this evening?
Yes, ma'am. As Mr. Jones indicated, and I think it was actually brought up I guess at the workshop, that we would be using this meeting to receive additional comments. It'll take that 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it's been for the board to formulate those. So we're here to take those.
Did you have a chance to look at the preamble that's been drafted by Grand Trees Chatham County?
We have looked at that. One of the things I think it was you that requested this again at the workshop, that we look at the work done by your committee and draft a preamble. So we have done that, waiting for our revisions to be included in the next draft of the element. So we'll take a look at that and see if there's anything that we should add to that from that work we've already done.
I thought it was a nice opportunity for the community to come together to help draft this language that would sort of create a set the tone for the tree ordinance.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things I did not understand after our last discussion was, and could you speak to the issue of averaging throughout are we looking at averaging throughout the 7,200 acres? Are we talking about averaging through the village center? Or when it comes to statistical work, are we looking at, I'm wondering if we're looking at too large an area?
Well, we're not talking, if you want to point me to the specific page you're looking at, but from what I remember about the averaging, it was more about the dimensional requirements, not about an entire area or site. It was if there was, I think we've got a 25-foot minimum dimension, and I think, I'm sorry, I'll let you get to your, what you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you find it, what the elements in the
Tree stand Exhibit C.
If anyone else has questions, go ahead and launch right in, if you might, while I try to locate mine.
Well, I'm going to at least give an answer until we get specific, just to make, because what I recall in this, without having her specific sentence in front of me, is that we were talking, there are minimum dimension standards, with 25 feet being one of those, and so that was contemplating issues where you weren't dealing with a pure square or rectangle, and that you had an irregular shape that came, maybe a triangle, that came down to a point where the dimension would be 0. And that, with that proposal, we were talking about being able to take an area and then taking the average of the area, as opposed to taking it down to the point where there was a minimum 25 feet, if that was the answer. But it wasn't looking at an entire subdivision, say, and averaging a percentage or anything like that.
Chuck, I have one question. Probably can remind me on this. The credit for the mature trees, did we change that back from 200%?
Well, we haven't. Y'all have proposed various things, and we haven't changed anything yet until we've received all the comments.
Okay. So can we go ahead and see about reducing that credit?
So your request is reduced the 200 to
150.
150.
It's under the Durham UDO elements, I believe.
Okay, got it.
I got so many notes I couldn't tell you exactly where it came from, to be honest.
Okay. Durham CDO.
You got that?
Yeah, 150% would be in line with Durham CDO. I appreciate Commissioner Terrell bringing that up.
Okay, so that's section 10.
We heard from someone who, they were saying that there was quite a few things, since you're using the Durham UD as a model, there's quite a few things that Chatham Park is following Durham on. And some of these things I think would also be good. Where Durham required 3% tree coverage in residential areas, they're now requiring 7%.
So that's in the urban tier?
Yeah. From the letter, Durham doesn't allow the clearing of PTA areas like the tree element does. Durham has very limited list of disturbance allowed in preserved tree areas or replanted tree areas.
I think those are concerns I share.
Yeah.
That if we're going to go to the effort of preserving trees, then we need to respect the area around the tree. And I've even heard the suggestion that the formula, 1.25 feet per inch, is inadequate because of the extent of root zones for so many trees. the challenge there is that's going to vary between species, as I'm sure Chuck could tell us. One way to look at it is if we want to preserve these trees for 5 years, as long as it takes to develop the property, sell it, then clearing right up to the trunk might be something we could do. But if we want to preserve these trees for perpetuity or for their natural lives, I would hope, then we need to respect the area around that tree. And the suggestion I've heard is what's it called, the rainfall area? Is that
The drip line.
Drip line, thank you. I think that appears in a couple of different places in the text, though, doesn't it?
Well, the reason that I would personally advise against drip line makes more sense when you're talking about specimen trees sitting out in the open by themselves, because it's a pretty close reflection of what the 1 foot or 1 1/4 foot per inch of caliper represents. When trees grow in the middle of the woods, they don't have as much of that drip line doesn't grow because it hadn't had as much light or air, and it's competing with other root zones. So all of a sudden you may have a tree that's, saying I've got a 10 or 15 foot radius based on the inch per, or the foot per inch, that doesn't have anywhere near that drip line. So that's why I think most of these things have gone more towards representing some sort of distance per caliper inch of tree rather than just referring to the drip line. But the drip line, your point is a good one when you're talking about the tree that is standing out there by itself.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the language that we need, but what I'm recently reading of the science is that in wooded forested areas, the trees are not merely competing with one another for nutrients, but they're also supporting one another and exchanging nutrients. So the roots from a smaller tree take up nutrients from larger trees and also give nutrients back to the larger trees in ways that I couldn't begin to articulate. But science is emerging that this is indeed true. And in fact, the trees are communicating with one another, which some folks have trouble believing. But there is chemical communication that goes on between the trees through the roots and their relationships with mycorrhizal fungi, the special fungi that live in and around roots. So how that goes down to tree cover area and protecting the root zone, I don't know, do others on the board have thoughts specifically to that?
It seems like you could measure the drip line based on a collection of trees, not just on individual trees. It could be calculated based on a stand of trees.
Well, I may need to draw, but I can't do that here. But when you've got a collection of trees, that means that those drip lines are overlapping. And so the further you get away from the center of that cluster, then you're leaving what the outside trees are telling you. So what you're doing is taking those outside trees, getting their root zone, and then defining the cluster by that outside protected area around those outside trees to establish a larger root zone area for that cluster. I don't know if that's what you're saying with either more or less eloquently than me.
I think you said it more eloquently.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Table 2, page 6 in the red line copy, where it says non-residential uses.
Yes, ma'am.
10%. I'd like to increase that.
So the non-residential use and mixed use chart where it says 10%.
Right, I think we're going to take mixed use out. I think we're going to remove that section.
I think that was a previous comment.
Yeah, and then increase that to around 12%.
ratios.
Thus incentivizing?
I think so. And only for that limited vertical integration, not trying to define it on a horizontal plane.
So what we're getting at is trying to encourage building up with mixed uses, residential over commercial, by allowing it to have lower tree requirements. Is that what I'm hearing you suggesting?
Lower than residential. And purely residential.
And you could increase that number without losing the incentive.
And that area would still have, Commissioner Jacob, I think you said, street trees that would not be quantified or percentage regulated with this language.
And parking lot trees. Clearly, if you have residential in that environment, we'll have to have some form of parking for the residents. So that would be additional landscaping, tree planting that would not otherwise qualify for tree coverage.
Well, in some cases, it sounds like they were going to get out some of the buffers and some of the other things, some of the street trees and medians, for example.
But only if it had like the open space requirement, that was like a substantial area.
Got a minimum 30-foot dimension
And 100-foot wall.
Right.
So in a median, that sort of thing.
That's not a normal situation, but it was trying to contemplate when that occurred.
And kind of incentivize and encourage that kind of thing.
And I think we also, correct me, and this may have been your point in the open space element, we limited the amount of open space that we could actually use in that particular situation, so we couldn't put all 100% of our open space in medians.
Yep.
And you said, let's limit that to 2%, whatever that was, I don't remember that. But anyway, so that means that it's going to be very few situations that will occur.
One of the things, and I don't have a specific number, but our original land use plan called for a 2,000-foot buffer along the Hall River. And of course, that's not even allowed now because of some of the other things we agreed to. But what I'd like to see is greater tree protection within that 2,000-foot boundary. I'm in favor of having the more dense areas, the urban areas more dense, but I'd like to see the land within a 2,000-foot buffer. I'd like to look at, the board thinks about having the 2,000-foot buffer area to have a higher percentage, and that would put us more in keeping with our land use plan without infringing on some of the building that Chatham Park wants to do. Let's think about that somehow, creating some language. The areas that you said you were going to leave a lot of tree cover anyway, it's just be nice to make it official within that 2,000-foot boundary.
I hope that everyone received an email that was sent out at the request of the mayor in our workshop about the graduated density and the overall density that would occur in that 2,000-foot zone where the density I think is 0.8 units per acre, the 300-foot, and that's based on a small area plan that's presented that showed in one of the sections the 300-foot buffer and then graduating the density up the hill, whereas the other section had a 500-foot buffer but actually showed 1,000-foot buffer being preserved in the small area. So I think that's probably getting some of what you're thinking. The other thing that we stated. Everybody else did? Okay. No, a week ago? Yeah. No, I didn't hear anyone respond. I just assumed everyone got it. But one of the other features of the plan that we have today, which disqualifies areas that will have trees in them, we know it from experience. what disqualifies them from counting is you don't require trees, or you don't count trees that are on residential lots. The lots closest to the hall are going to be larger lots. You're not going to clear them. The homeowner will clear what they want for their house, driveway, backyard. So there's going to be quite a number of trees, again, that don't count, but will be there and increase the amount of tree coverage.
But they could theoretically.
They could.
Clear their land.
They could, but what I hear again and again, that the marketplace, the pros marketplace, is people who love trees. I don't think people moving here are going to say, I hate trees, I'm clearing every last one on my lot.
I think that's
There could be
necessarily
some.
what I'm in favor of is within that 2,000-foot boundary, the people who choose to live there will be held to certain responsibilities for living with that place of the Haw River, that they be, in a sense, keepers of the Haw River. And I think, whereas I'm not in favor, I agree with you, you can't really enforce trees on people's private property. But I think there could be an exception for that 2,000-foot buffer that there should be some restrictions, that they should be required to keep a certain number of trees that close to the Haw River. Because there are people who want to just like, oh, I want a view of the river and just cut down everything. There's nothing to stop. We can't assume that the people in the future that come there are going to value trees in the same way. I think it's really important that we look after the Haw River as going to provide drinking water for those people. And I think within that 2,000-foot buffer, we can expect more of people.
Commissioner Foley, I appreciate you speaking up about that. I think that I'd like to envision something similar. And I wonder if Chatham Park investors might consider, I think it's not a HOA, but a property owners association. Would you contemplate covenants for that area within the 2,000-foot buffer that are different, that are protective of the soil and the water and the tree canopy?
Well, we do have different standards in that already set up in the small area plan, which hasn't come before you yet. So we've already done that. We haven't specifically about requiring more trees because of this whole issue of not being able to regulate within a property owner's lot. Just like in Bynum, if anybody can take down all those trees in those larger lots if they want to. There's nothing restricting that.
My own homeowners association tightly restricts and regulates the maintenance of trees in our neighborhood.
I'm not saying we don't tightly restrict the maintenance of trees. I'm not saying that. But we do have standards, and that we'll consider that. I mean, one of the things, we've already within the small area plan increased the buffer where it was 500 feet to 1,000 feet, and that is not controlled by an individual owner who can go clear it to get a better view of the river. Just like the 300-foot buffer in the other area. So those are areas that are protected from any sort of clearing by individual property owners.
And I would like to add also that in our current regulations, there is no restriction on anyone's ability to buy property along the Haw and cut down every tree. And chain off, we've seen none of that. Fence off their property to the Haw, making the river inaccessible. So the fact that we have a 300-foot buffer and a 500-foot buffer that is connected to state-owned property actually preserves public access to the river that we don't have today. Should somebody decide to build their home on a parcel and put a fence line all the way down to the river. So it is an asset, it is something to think about that is a benefit of Chatham Park's plan versus our current regulations.
Good so we can fix that in the UDO?
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever taken a canoe from, or a kayak down through this Hall. But there are a number of houses there where people have literally cleared out the trees all the way down to the river. It's just grass all the way to the river. And I'm sure it's not allowed, and that's not enforced. And I don't want to see that happen.
It can't happen here. Absolutely, it can't, because of those buffers that are along the river. The property owner doesn't own to the river.
I don't think they do, and I can't see their best to do it.
Well, as Mr. Bonnet says, I mean, the force of the HOA would come down on these people because they don't know. That's like me coming over to your yard and taking out trees because I want to improve something. I mean, I don't control that.
Would you be willing, as Mr. Bonnet said, would you be willing to consider special consideration for the 2,000 feet of the Fall River having?
We'll consider it, but we won't. I guarantee you, we're not going to be 2,000 feet away, doing something that far away from the river, because that yes, Mr. Piogo can correct me, because I wasn't around during that time, but that was a standard that was being looked at in the county. But when you start trying to force density from the county into the cities and into the urban areas, then you're starting to look at things a little bit differently. And some of that gets back again to public water and sewer versus well and septic tank development and all these other reasons that go into looking at standards differently. So, I mean, as I said, we've imposed as part of the master plan approval those 300 and 500 foot buffers. The 500 we've already shown in the small area plan, but it will still be there, that we're growing that to 1,000 feet. So those are pretty substantial buffers and a pretty big commitment of land that we've already established. So we had talked about the lots that we're bumping up against, because of the density tiers, as Mr. Piogo says, they are larger lots. There's no question about that. You can only get so many lots when you've got, it's just math, that with a 1 unit an acre requirement for that tier closest to the river, that we were looking at protecting trees on the back of those lots, but we just kept getting the comments that you can't put that kind of control on. We don't want any standard within the single-family lot themselves. All the protection needs to occur outside the lots. We still think that'll occur, but we haven't restricted that to this point.
That's not a license that you restricted.
Yeah, I've got it noted. Yes, ma'am.
There are questions for Chuck?
So I think we're on a related subject, Chuck. When you mentioned units per 1 acre, the areas that are going to be especially dense and treated specifically by the language of quarter acre, 10,000 square foot, that's open for grading, and we discussed it last meeting, our workshop. And Commissioner Foley, I wanted to echo her concern that I believe that we can build densely without so much mass grading, and I'd very much like to see that number brought down rather than 10,000 square foot. Not so low as Chapel Hill's 5,000 square foot, but perhaps 7,000 square foot. Anytime that we're doing that mass grading and clearing, we're going to have a greater impact on the watershed. And the BNPs and all of the efforts that your company is making, we're still seeing visible signs in our waterways, and it's troubling. and I recognize the limits of the law, but I would appreciate all efforts that can be made for excellence in this matter. Thank you for
I
taking
agree
note.
with that too.
So another big question, I think, relates to the interplay or the overlap of tree coverage area and tree canopy. I've seen the images, I've heard the attempts at explaining it, and it just, maybe Chuck, maybe you can help me here, because it seems to me like just rife with confusion, because as I understand it, canopy is something that's in the future.
No. Canopy is today.
It's today.
But every tree that's planted has canopy.
Okay.
It may be a very small percent when it's a very young tree, very small tree, but it has canopy. It has got leaves and branches.
Right. But
you count the actual and not the future canopy.
No, you're just counting the actual, not the, it grows, but you're not, you only count it when it grows as, you're counting what's actually there if you're talking about canopy.
okay, and the idea that at some point in future we'll have 50% or more than 50% canopy, I guess I was stuck in the idea that assumes a measure of growth in that canopy.
No, well, when I talked about it last at the workshop, it was more, this is obviously it's living and breathing, and it's every tree is growing. Some trees are dying, so you're losing canopy when a tree dies. But every other tree is growing. New trees are being planted, so you're adding canopy through that. So it's just shrinking in some areas as they develop, but it's growing in areas that have already been developed or haven't been touched yet. So it's a number that never stays the same. But I think with the standards that we proposed, as I said, it's not going. We won't be below 50% in Channel Park of canopy
At any point.
At any point.
And TCA is the metric by which we're actually attempting to regulate future development. But canopy, I apologize for being vague on this, but can you help me understand, is that also a binding number or factor?
Okay, I'm not completely sure I've got exactly what you're asking with those last few words. But what is binding are the other, between what's in the tree protection element and what's in the landscape element. What is binding are two things: saving existing trees and planting new trees. Much of the canopy area we're talking about, as you started this out by saying, Mr. Pietro explained this, that there are going to be many areas where there are trees that you get no credit towards TCA, but you will have canopy. And he mentioned this: any tree that's in a single-family lot is canopy and contributes to that 50%, but is not part of the TCA percentage. Okay, that's one example. Parking lots are another example where we've got a pretty robust requirement for planting within parking lots. That's providing canopy. That's providing shade. Street trees along the streets, we talked about that being, that's a standard that nobody else around here has that standard. And that's contributing to reducing heat island effect because of what's coming off of the asphalt adjacent to the streets adjacent to those trees. So that's all part of canopy that is not part of TCA. So that's how you get that. That's why we're talking two different types of percentages. There are two different percentages for those two different standards.
There's another substantial contributor to the canopy that doesn't count as TCA, and that is perimeter buffers that are less than 25 feet wide.
Right.
and that is a substantial amount.
Yeah, if you look at the landscape element, how many buffers are less than 20, a great number of those are less than 25 feet, and particularly in the non-residential areas where when you've got those non-residential uses against one another, that's generally where you're, usually it's a retail situation, but those are, I don't want to say always, but almost always less than 25 feet, which means you would get no credit for TCA, but you will have a lot of canopy because you will have either two 10-foot areas backing up to each other, making a 20-foot area, or two 20-foot areas backing up to each area, making a 40-foot area. A 40-foot wide area not getting any credit towards canopy, towards TCA, but providing a great deal of canopy because you'll be planting 4 trees per 100 linear feet of that buffer for canopy trees on each side. So within that 20 or 40-foot area that doesn't get that credit because it's not 25 feet, you're going to be planting 8 trees within a 100-foot length. That's why when you fly over this part of the country, you see trees. They will grow, and they grow pretty rapidly in the scheme of this. In those areas that we are not getting TCA credit, but it's providing canopy.
So basic trees, some of the trees will die. The town responsible for replacing those trees.
It's not on your property, so it's our responsibility. I guess if that occurred within a parking lot or something, that's different. But
about 3% tree coverage for residential areas within the village center. I understand it's really low. I understand that we want to try to make that area, but still, even given that, it still seems very low.
Is that the one that we were talking about raising 7? Is that right?
yes, that's what you had requested, be 7 instead of 3.
At one time during our discussion, you proposed on page 12 of the red line version. There at the top of that page, we're talking about replacement trees. We're talking about the amount of canopy and the native, the fact that they would be native trees. You had asked that be a 75%.
No, we agreed that was a native, not the, I think we're talking 2 different things here. One is the percentage of canopy trees, and then the second was the percentage, how much of that would be native. And so you were asking for 100% native and 75% canopy instead of 50% canopy. So we've got those comments noted. And I would say, the only we don't have a problem with 100% native other than those unusual situations of availability. It's going to, native makes all the sense in the world, and we're going to be doing that. And I think we would probably write it so that it allowed unusual situations when you couldn't find trees and we've got site plans that you're approving, and we've got, we need to plant within a certain time and things like that. So that's, I think, the only time we would contemplate something that would not be 100% native, if that makes sense to you.
It does make sense, but I also think that, like for example, down the road you're going to need X number of trees. It's the second time you can contract with someone.
Well, we try to do that. I'll give you, this is the way Mr. Bonnets gets upset sometimes, and I understand this. And this is not a shot across the bow or anything about artful language that we present. So, I get that. But in the late '90s, when the Olympics were in Atlanta, that thing sucked up all the trees in that area, and they could not find anything for everybody else in that area to plant. And so, again, there's just unusual situations that we would, when you put an absolute 100% standard, it just makes it difficult to sometimes meet. So that's the only caveat I would put on there.
Yeah, maybe we could do with that on a case-by-case basis.
Well, I made a note, and I know this is done with landscaping when there's shortages, that the property owner can post a bond in order for their operation to open, stating that they will plant within a certain period of time when the availability, when the nursery is available. It doesn't, for instance, if you were opening something in the middle of summer, July or August, not a time you want to plant trees. You want to give them the chance. Right. And so, but the business wants to be open, and I think everyone wants the business to be open. So you can post a bond that says, if I don't do this by this time frame, and you can spend more money to do it.
I think that'd be preferable to holding out language that would allow some exceptional circumstances.
That sounds like pretty artful language.
It is. It's artful in the direction of the policy goals.
We're artful on both sides of this.
Rather than artful estimation or artful thought.
I know it's to your benefit to plant native trees because they don't tend to die. They tend to do well.
Look, I mean, we completely agree with that.
Are you willing to take a look at that bond, incorporating Michael's suggestion?
Well, I know we've got language in here, and I can't find it off the top of my head, but about, there's already something in here about planting, about some requirement if again, if it's summer or something like that, where you don't want us planting in the summer. And waiting until the fall or whatever that is. I know there's some language in here and I just can't find it off the top of my head, but I understand the issue.
I know that you all don't want to create draft after draft, but at this point, my red line version is...
It's almost all red, isn't it?
It's looking pretty ragged here. And I'm noticing with great interest that Pamela's is about the same way. We're beginning to write vertically, horizontally. Is it your plan to get a new version to us? Can you give me sort of an idea?
I'll tell you my plan, but I've had a lot of plans that haven't necessarily come to fruition, but we are going to, just because this isn't the first time you've given us comments, we've been keeping up with writing responses to comments within the element up until now. So we're not completely up to speed, but then with these, what we plan on doing is getting this done in the next few days so that we get this back. And one of the things we committed to Jeff on doing is that he would see, I mean, some of this gets into process, some of the issues you brought up the last meeting, just in terms of process and early tree information obtained so that you can design by it, and then later more specific tree information generated. So we wanted Jeff to weigh in on that before that became memorialized, and we were going to send him an outline, just a kind of a step-by-step of the way we saw things happening. So we wanted him to see that. But short of that, I mean, we would do that, and then we would propose that you get this as early as we can get it back to you, rather than waiting until your packet comes to you 3 days before the meeting. So if we have to hand deliver that, we will do that. We'll, again, defer to Mr. Jones on how he would like to do that. But again, get this back to you as soon as possible. Give staff time to look at it and get it out to you as quickly as it can be delivered.
Shall we continue the discussion now with Chuck? Are there further lines of inquiry?
Yes. Back to Commissioner Baldwin's point on percentages. I am hopeful that you might consider higher percentages for each of the categories.
Yes.
And I'll suggest for those high density residential areas that we look for something closer to 30 or 40%.
I'll tell you now, we're not going to do that. We can't do it. We don't. If you're looking again, if the standards have been, we're talking about 50% canopy. It doesn't take 30% TCA to get 50% canopy.
Okay, so there's another opportunity for us to learn from you, because it doesn't. It's not easily understood.
Well, the examples I've used previously, and I appreciate that. I get that. The examples I've used previously, what we're proposing with percentages, if you look at, and we've looked at, you've asked us to look at certain examples around the state and other parts of the Southeast. In the state, it's not like every municipality has a tree protection ordinance. Not many of them do, actually. The ones that do fall in the range of these percentages we're talking about. Now, we can, whether it's 5% or 7% or 7% or 3% or 10% or 20%, they all vary a little bit, but they are in that range. 20% with the residential that Durham's got and that we're proposing, that's at the high end of these, what other municipalities are doing. Most are not doing that. Now, at the same time, the example I've used is Charlotte. Charlotte, and y'all asked, and again, it's a nonprofit in Charlotte. Every city that's got a tree protection ordinance must have a nonprofit that's kind of watching out for what's going on. But generally, those people have been measuring canopy. Charlotte today has 47% canopy. Their goal is 50%. We talked about that before. But their standards for TCA are 10 and 15%. Okay, how do they get to 50% with 10 and 15% on that? They aren't doing it with 30%. They're doing it with 10 and 15. And it's because, again, much of that canopy is not part of that TCA area. It's in single-family lots. It's in parking lots. It's in buffers around the perimeters and things, the examples we've been given. And you get to, when you do that, you get to 50% canopy.
Is there a way for you to come up with those numbers for us so we can, so that we're, that we
Well, I can,
sure
yeah,
that's really going to happen?
I think we did that about a year ago, but we'll do it again. All we've done is go into, it's just, you can do it on your phone right now. And I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying we've already got documents where we've gone and researched the other municipalities and come up with those, what their ordinances say.
I think Commissioner Foley is thinking about maybe some kind of graphical or quantitative description of what you are saying now to give us examples of how, maybe sneak previews of what the small area plan will suggest. Is that?
Yeah.
Some illustrations?
Some sense of, if you add, specifically to Chatham Park, if you add the buffers you've agreed to, the ordinance, I just want to see that it is going to add up to 50, because you're just basically asking them just to say, oh, just trust us.
No, well, really, what I'm not even asking you to trust me. Believe me, after the last few years, I don't think anybody trusts me. But what I'm asking you to do is look at what the cities that measure their canopy and look at their requirements and just do that equate. Okay, this is what they're requiring. This is what they have. Don't trust me. Just look at what it says.
Sure.
And that's what I'm saying that we have come up with in terms of researching what Winston-Salem does, Greensboro does, Durham does.
We've seen some of those comparables,
right?
And I think different advocates have also put those forward. But the challenge that I keep having there is that those are not greenfield developments. Those are existing cities with 100-year-old infrastructure, with buildings that have been built out for multiple generations, impervious surfaces that go back multiple generations. You're not able to go backwards in terms of protecting the tree canopy. And that's what we have the opportunity to do now. And Chuck, I really appreciate you engaging in the conversation so constructively, because I think you didn't, maybe you and your colleagues were surprised by this, but this community highly values its tree cover.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
Every community that has these standards values their tree coverage.
Yes.
They do.
But
You aren't any different from them.
But they don't have existing forests.
Well, they did, and they still developed by these standards because they looked at that balance between urban, suburban, rural. They looked at that balance between economic development and just leaving things purely as they are, and there's a balance there. You can't provide one and have the other.
And that's where I would push back. I don't think that's accurate. I think that it's possible for us to build and preserve forests.
Well, I think we have gone to that edge, and I'm hopeful that we haven't gone beyond that edge. I've given examples of there is not a large development in this region that the first developer has not gone bankrupt with it. It's because of all the infrastructure costs and all the upfront costs that are loaded on them. Everybody, I'm not going to go. I mean, I get a little bit bothered by all the conversation of you say you're going to be exemplary, you should do this. You're not doing this. And I'm not picking on any one person because I hear it everywhere. When we're spending $30 million on a reclaimed water facility, that's a pretty doggone strong commitment to sustainability and protecting our resources. Now, you can't continue to do all those things, though. So, I mean, we're trying to balance all this. I mean, we added a lot of uplift on the providing parks. I think we've done it every step of the way. And so, I'm not saying that we're not doing it here. I think we have been doing it here. But there's this point where we get to, and we have to determine that is this too far for us. You get to determine, sorry, it wasn't far enough, and you can vote accordingly.
I would like to just say that I've been at this Chatham Park for 6-7 years, and we improved the master plan when our economy was in the tank, and we were looking for economic development. And we found a way to approve a master plan that said, it's not complete, please get to work, we'll limit your development to a certain amount while we work through all these additional elements. I've always known in crafting this document and with the open space, with the rec space, with the increased tree buffers, with the landscape standards, with the complete streets, with the parking lot requirements, that we were always going to get more trees through the tree element. Not having it in individual properties, not counting the street trees, not counting these areas, we're going to get more trees through crafting this document in this way. I'm confident of that. I've been thinking about this and planning on this for 7 years. I think we have an excellent plan, and I think it is a green field. But if you look to these other municipalities, you can get a glimpse of the future. And if in fact they have used these standards to get 50% tree canopy, you can look at that. Bear in mind, in Chatham Park, we talked about a 40 or 50 year build out. So in 30 years from now, those saplings that are planted are going to be glorious 30-year-old trees, while development is happening in other locations in Chatham Park. I think Chatham Park is an exemplary area, exemplary development, and it is because we have put really rigid standards on them. I mean, this is not even talking about the fact that we said we need public art in every development. We recognize we're a community of artisans and artists. Let's create a market. We did that. That's cost to the developer, to the development. We're going to take up affordable housing. That's really important to me. That we don't create a community that prices everyone but the very wealthy out of the community. Chuck touched on the infrastructure that's going on. We've built water towers, sewer treatment plants. These are all things that we're desperately looking to accomplish in years past. And I remember in years past, we used to call it public-private partnership, and we thought it was the greatest thing ever. Well, there they are, the private organization partnering with us to help create this exceptional community. And I think that through all the 12 elements and the commitments in the master plan, they far exceed anything that Pittsburgh has ever seen.
I think they far exceed anything any other municipality has seen in this state. But I would probably think that before anybody.
I think this is an exceptional plan. Exceptional. Yes.
Do we have further discussion?
Mayor, Chuck, I know we discussed this at the workshop about the forest land. Did we ever make a decision on the years on that? Or what that was regarding?
I know. Well, I know Mr. Eagle, but I think there's two situations of a 3-year and a 5-year, and I don't remember, but we have updated that based on what is out there in the general statutes, I believe. And you'll see that with the revised.
Is that the tax exemption issue?
Can't get
right.
developed.
But we have.
Okay. Thank you.
Chuck, referring back to our prior workshop, you got in your notes the idea of some state regarding in cases of new tree planting, something regarding soil quality.
We have got your comment about topsoil.
Because you've already referenced that in the landscaping element, cross-reference, I mentioned.
It's a little bit different situation, but yeah, it'll be there in some form.
Very good. And on replacement trees, well, I guess we've already covered this, guidance towards selection of native species.
Right, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And there was also a request to change the 2-inch minimum to 2.5-inch minimum.
Thank you.
So we got that.
And Commissioner Baldwin's request that we add arborists to the list.
Yes, we've got that. Yeah.
One additional question, I don't know if that was covered yet in section 10 about the specimen tree. And I think this was in the workshop where it said we wanted to increase the amount of ground protected around the tree to allow the roots of the tree to be protected. Did we increase that percentage?
Well, we had the comment down to increase from the we have in here proposed one. Make sure I'm looking at the right.
The red line. I'm sorry, the red line.
Yeah, the comment was to change to 1.25 feet per inch of caliper previously. A protected area around that tree, around that specimen tree. To go to around the specimen tree rather than a foot of root zone protected per inch of caliper, changing it to 1.25 feet. Radius, that's right. I'm sorry. That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 10-inch tree, it would be 12.5 feet instead of 10 feet of protected area from the center of the tree over radius to radius. So a total of 25 feet diameter as opposed to 20 feet.
And can we prohibit road building in that area?
Yeah, I think we cleared that up last time. We aren't trying to build roads in that area.
Yeah. conversation about it being adjacent to a property edge.
Right, we got into the 75% and all those things, but the intent was not to go in there and put a road right beside it if we're trying to save that specimen tree.
100%.
Pardon?
100%.
Well, that was the, oh.
You didn't like the idea that 75% has to be preserved, 100% stayed out of that zone completely. That's
And so, I recognize that it may not be practical to say no grubbing, no clearing underneath that tree, but can we have the arborist guide us on how that grubbing and clearing should proceed?
Absolutely. I'm not thinking about the answer to your question. I was thinking more about the situation.
That would, in my mind, come into play if you wanted to encroach in that area. To have an arborist say, yeah, you can do it.
I think we're seeing a mosaic happening this past week or two, where the specimen trees are clearly being protected, but there's also grubbing being done underneath those trees.
And within the protected zone?
I believe so. You know, and I understand
grubbing.
judgments are made because there's a whole bunch of yellow pines or loblollies in there that may physically detract from these grand specimen trees, but
I don't think equipment is going in there and grubbing.
Maybe doing it manually. Right.
But you will be maintaining those areas. So what do you want me to, when you have the situation of the specimen tree that's 10 feet off the property line, and many of those roots are off the property line, I can't commit to 100% of the roots being protected.
That's out of your power. So.
Well, yeah, but it's still, again, the artful language of writing these things is the kind of things we worry about. That's one of the reasons that 75% is in there. Is not.
I don't think you could be held responsible for activities that take place off the property. So set it at 100%, and we'll try to act like good neighbors.
Correct.
I think we're getting incorrection on the
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're incorrect.
Okay.
We have the areas that we're supposed to protect. We've been out there and we've set tree protection zones way far outside of them. We're not disturbing any trees that we've committed to protect.
Okay.
Just like the citizen who sent a complaint in from a different site, not our site, and the state person came out and they passed our phase 1 and said it was the best looking erosion protection they'd seen. So we're trying to do everything to be exemplary. We work hard. We get accused of not doing things, and so I just want to, that's not true.
Thank you, Chris.
So right now what I've heard is for the specimen trees is to reduce the incentive of going to 200% back to 100%, but then keep 100%, go from 75% on the roots to 100% of the roots. So you kind of lost all the incentives to save that specimen tree, which the last meeting was where you were trying to, you thought you wanted to go.
I think it was 200% to 150%.
I wasn't sure if that's what Jay said or not.
Yeah.
No, that's right. You're right. I got 100%. Yeah, what I just read, 150%. Jay, that's all.
It's all good. Halftime.
Break time.
Halftime. Anybody got the score?
I understand there's a basketball game.
We
We're
promised.
gonna lose power when it starts, right?
We promised we would try to get out before the basketball game.
Tom D'Alessandro went to the University of Virginia. But he doesn't know they play basketball, so I don't think it works.
Anything further?
I just have one comment. Maybe this is for staff, Jeff and staff. Are we getting there on this element? Are you feeling comfortable with this?
Well, I haven't seen their rewrite, but
Right.
As you all have said, we've got a lot of markups on our pages, so y'all have given them a lot of feedback, good feedback in positive direction to increase the percentages or to clarify where trees are going to be kept. We're moving in the right direction.
Okay, good, thanks.
Chuck, I do have a question for you. Just wanted to hear your comments about this. This is something sent in by your neighbor. Durham places conditions on clear cutting under the forestry division. In section 9.5.2, Durham requires mass grading buffers unless the forest management plan uses the current best management practice set out in North Carolina Forestry Best Management Practices Manual to protect water quality, as amended as adopted by the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. What are your thoughts about that? This language is allowed, but that's more protected language should be incorporated.
Well, without having in front of me what Mr. Eagle has found from the state on those 3 and 5 year references, and then without knowing exactly what that's, I mean, I would like to look at that. I'm not saying we're opposed to including things like that. I mean, I know, and I appreciate you have to, and I think you've used the example, you guys could sell this tomorrow and then all of a sudden, which implies you sort of trust us, but you may not trust the next person. That there be rules in place to prevent that from happening from the next, but we're not trying to go down and clear cut 1,000 acres or 500 acres. That's not. But I know you have to make sure that there are things in there that sort of guard against that. So I mean, I understand your point, and we're working on that.
Yeah, it sounded to me like this was a comment basically asking that we look to the Durham UDO language specifically with regard to forest management BMPs. And I believe that some of your acres are under forest management, and that's fine. I think we need to maintain our forests, and I'm an advocate for forest practices and a climate policy one. So, but just ensuring that that we have that BMP in your forest management plan, as best management practices, and that some closer look is to be taken at section 9.5.2 from Durham's UDO. That'd be great. 9.5.2.
Ready to move on to the next item. We have been Victoria Baylor helping us.
Thanks, Jeff.
With the rezoning of 196 Chatham Business Drive from A2 to office and institutional.
Thank you, Mayor. This is rezoning REZ-2019-02. Third Wave Housing is proposing to rezone parcel 80091 from C2 Highway Commercial to ONI CZ Office and Institutional Conditional Zoning District. Conditional zoning districts are intended to allow for the development of property in accordance with the general use zoning district standards. and additional conditions that enable the use and development to fit better with the site and neighboring properties. This parcel, located at 196 Chatham Business Drive, totals approximately 3.4 acres and has been zoned C2 since the late 1980s. The future land use plan has this property designated for commercial, and the surrounding properties are currently zoned C2 to the north, south, and east, while the west side of this parcel adjoins properties zoned both M2 and C2. This project will require 10,440 gallons per day. The current sewer allocation available under the 90% rule is approximately 23,600 gallons per day. Staff is recommending approval of the sewer allocation with an expiration of 6 months unless the site plan and construction drawings are submitted to continue the process. This is so that our remaining sewer capacity doesn't get tied up for a long time. However, the applicant is requesting an expiration of 12 months. The site plan you have before you is for multifamily housing. The developer's intent is that this be affordable housing. They have proposed 48 units total, 9 one-bed, 1-bath, 39 2-bedroom, 2-bath. One of the conditions they have imposed on the site plan is a maximum of 71 parking spaces, which is also the minimum required by the zoning ordinance. A public hearing was held on March 25th, 2019. One citizen, the chairman of the Affordable Housing Board, chose to speak in favor of the rezoning. The planning board considered this rezoning at their April 1st meeting. The board noted concerns regarding walkability, as well as locating residential adjacent to property zone M2. Questions were posed about the grading of the site, and requests were made for the enlargement of the playground and for the previously shown additional side buffer to be returned. The board found that the plan was not consistent with the future land use plan, but recommended approval in a vote of 6-0. Staff finds this property to be in a suitable location for the proposed office and institutional conditional zoning district because although the surrounding zoning is mostly highway commercial, the majority of the uses along Chatham Business Drive are fairly low intensity and would also be permitted in the general O&I zoning district. This amendment is not consistent with the future land use plan. However, due to the specificity of this proposal and its compatibility with the majority of the surrounding uses, staff is recommending approval with the following suggested conditions. 1, that the project must meet the affordable housing definition to qualify for either 4 or 9% financing, and 2, a public sidewalk along Chatham Business Drive shall be incorporated into the site plan and installed prior to CO.
Victoria, that sidewalk, will that extend past their property boundaries?
No.
Only on their immediate frontage?
Correct.
This is a completely tangential question, but is there a space in the right of way for continuation of that sidewalk, say in front of the convalescent facility there?
I believe there's already a sidewalk that goes partially up Chatham Business Drive. So you would have to just meet it up somewhere in the middle. Our pedestrian plan is only showing sidewalk on one side of Chatham Business Drive.
That's right. Piedmont Health Services is the adjacent property owner.
Are there questions?
Those conditions of the sidewalk and the definition before the housing?
They were emailed earlier today, but I have not discussed it with them.
I guess is the affordability restriction on the water, on the sewer allotment?
No.
Because typically, we haven't ever had an affordable, 100% we're doing affordable, so it's not like we're trying to, but we haven't seen that as a restriction of zoning, that it's a long-term covenant related to affordability. I can see that when the city has a loan or a tax abatement or something, that sometimes that's a covenant related to that. But we have not seen it as a long-term restriction on the zoning classification itself. So I can see it being if the allocation of the sewer would be based upon it keeping it affordable, that would make sense.
Which would be for a moment in time.
For a moment in time, the affordability on the tax credits, what we're doing is 30 years already.
Right.
And that's a LORA that's actually recorded on the site that keeps it affordability for 30 years.
So I think perhaps the intent was for the affordability to run with the duration of the tax credit.
I agree. And we could just have the LORA, which is the long-term use agreement that goes on it, that would be listed in that.
But I agree that we would not ask you to do it for longer than what your program may be granted.
Understand.
Why not? If you wanted it affordable, why not?
You're going to have a 30-year commitment on it.
To somebody else, not you.
But if it's not affordable, then it's a zoning violation.
If it's not affordable, why should they get the permit?
Sorry?
How are you going to maintain this, that it stays affordable?
For 30 years?
For any time?
Well, we're going to do it for 30 years because that's the length of his program with the tax credit.
That's his program and his commitment to somebody else, not to the town.
So you would like then that there be some kind of reporting mechanism that he report to the town that is...
I would like for them to place a covenant that says that it's affordable.
Okay.
Forever.
Well, I don't see I can tell you that in the affordable housing discussions that we've had, we are not talking about perpetuity. We're talking about 30-year time frame. So I'm comfortable with 30-year commitment.
Yeah. Traditionally, it hasn't been a longer term than that because at some point you'll hit the end of the useful life of the building itself. And at that point, it will be recapitalized, and it depends what the marketplace is. If there's a tax credit program that's through the federal government, or if there's a trust fund that's in Pittsburgh that's set up to refund it, then that would be it. But if it has to be have new roofs and have all the systems replaced, and it needs to go to the affordable in order to make that happen at that stage, that may be what happens to it. Long term, and I've been doing this for 30 years, so I'm probably almost this limit that we're talking about right now is these buildings do not, once they're affordable, they stay affordable. Unless they're in the downtown metro or something like that that's going to flip over to turn them into condos or something else. But I don't see long-term Pittsburgh that this is going to be a building that we're going to turn into condos 30 years from now.
What about the sidewalk?
Sidewalk, we don't have a problem. The puzzle we have, and we drove it tonight, is that there isn't another.
There'd be a gap.
There's a gap. There's a gap. The congregate care that we have next door to us does not have a sidewalk all the way up there, and we're not proposing to put curb or gutter in the space. So we're going to have a sidewalk that's going to be people can actually drive up on it.
Behind the ditch?
Behind the ditch would be where I would...
Right.
Yeah, because that's where our stormwater water's going, is down the ditch.
Yeah.
So on the project side of the ditch is where the sidewalk is.
Correct, right.
I would say, and against the education.
Not against the
Right.
education.
And I think the version of the condition we have is that be constructed at site approval. And I think we're talking about converting it to certificate of occupancy.
We have a new ordinance.
New condition.
We worked with the town attorney on the wording.
Okay. So it's just for the project's frontage.
Yeah.
And it's to be installed before the first certificate of occupancy. Okay.
And our thought is it's going to be from the driveway on up.
Yep.
Because we're on a cul-de-sac, so it's nowhere.
And
We need to talk about that, yeah, about our frontage. That's what our ordinance.
So we're basically running it to a differential?
That's what our ordinance calls for. We can talk about it. We have to go through this process again. So, yeah.
I mean, we don't have an issue with it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to make it impervious surface. If we're all talking about trying to save and not having to deal with stormwater.
We can talk about it later. We're not mandating where it has to be on frontage.
Yeah, we believe in walkability. I mean, we do urban infill, we do historic buildings. So we're used to dealing with downtown walkable. And traditionally, we would be in your downtown in the walkable section already. This is the best piece of land we could find close to downtown to try affordability and make sure we can do affordable housing here in Pittsburgh.
I noticed that there was a condition removed where you were asking for the ability to do high-density stormwater option from an impervious surface perspective. And I was wondering if that was another one of the caveats that when you go for your tax arrangement, that they would be looking for that kind of certainty in your zoning.
No, zoning, what we basically need, the application went in January. For the next round of application, we need a letter from the city that says the property is zoned for multifamily and that we have water and sewer available to the site. So the two things right now is basically for us to get a letter that states that related to the property. The application itself, and that's why we're asking for the 12 months, is we're not going to find out if we end up getting tax credits until September. And we can't spend any money. This is basically we're a small developer. There's no way we would be able to spend money on working on full civil drawings, which is the next step, which is basically a $60,000 item for us to even start that until we end up getting an allocation of credits in September. And then that would be part of, traditionally, the civil engineers, the architects, everybody works together for the permit sets of drawings, where this time next year we'd be coming in and getting approval for the permit set of drawings itself, which is why we're asking for 12 months related to it. Oh, this is actually what we're. Thanks for getting this. This is actually another property we built. 3-story walkout, pretty much 2 24-unit buildings. This is what we're proposing putting on. This is effectively 2 acres. And I think as we were kind of talking about putting things on, the subdivision that went up before us a little while ago, they have 6 houses on more space than we're putting 48 units. So that's why it's a very effective way to preserve open land related to it, is to have 48 households here on 2. This is effectively about 2.5 acres. This is as small as you possibly can get to do an affordable housing transaction. We're already, traditionally we try to do 80 units and we try to do it on 7.5 acres. And so this one's us trying to be creative. The county got us involved originally, and then we did some of the bus tours of trying to say, okay, how do we add affordability to Pittsburgh? And this is us being really creative and using our historic urban infill rules versus somebody who likes to go out there by the Walmart and put 7 acres of 80 units on in that sense.
Further questions for Victoria or the developer?
Make a motion to approve the resolution adopting the consistency statement for amendment to the zoning ordinance of the town of Pittsburgh as before us in the agenda package.
Would you consider adding the conditions that the planning staff has recommended?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Well, there are no conditions.
Well, the consistency statement doesn't need to include that, right?
No, but the resolution.
Approving it, if we are to accept the resolution.
The consistency statement was moved by Michael Kyoto, seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
I'll also make a motion to approve an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the with the conditions that the project must meet the affordable housing definition required to qualify for the 4 or 8 or 9% financing for the duration of the tax credit term, expected to be 30 years, and that a sidewalk be planned and installed along the public right-of-way of Chatham Business Drive for project frontage prior to the first certificate of occupancy.
Heard the motion by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
You want a separate resolution on the sewer?
Resolution on the sewer. We have a motion on the sewer for it to extend out 12 months as the developer is requesting. So moved by Pamela Baldwin.
Second.
Seconded by Michael Fiocco. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Are there not pervious surfaces that are now being used for sidewalks? I was in a beach community recently. Are there pervious surfaces that are now being used for sidewalks in sensitive areas? I was thinking right near your retention pond.
There is some, but they tend to be very expensive and not things that we can do under the tax credit program.
Sir, I have just one comment. On the back of your property, is there a possibility of some type of greenway that comes out to Martin Luther King Drive? It also comes near the fairgrounds and the county, which would be right near the Food Line Shopping Center. Now, is that a possibility?
There is just a stream and a buffer that's there.
You're willing to work with us in terms of...
we would love to be, as we're talking about trails or other stuff, we'd love to do that. Because it's a benefit for our tenants if there's some other ways we can connect that.
They could walk to the...
Yeah. And if there's a way to walk there, people will figure out how to do it, whether or not we do it as a official approval. Thank you.
Mr. Farrell, is that what you're looking for?
Thank you.
Next we have the sewer allocation.
Yeah, it's really a plan extension with a sewer allocation along with it. And so I'll take the lead and Elizabeth can assist as needed. Typically, plan extensions are on your consent agenda, and those usually go through just fine. A developer, an applicant requests it in time, and we put it on your consent agenda. And generally, as always, y'all have granted an extension for an additional 12 months for either a site plan or a subdivision. We wanted to take this opportunity at this extension request for Mill South Townhomes along Masonic to give you all an opportunity to think about the sewer aspect of this development. We all have appreciated, we are appreciating the limited amount of sewer that the town currently has, and with this project being a little over 15,000 gallons per day that was granted at the last year, we wanted you all to consider the full breadth of the request of extending the project, because generally the sewer allocation would be extended for another 12 months as well. We understand there's been some challenges with the project itself. If you recall, it was a townhome project that had a little bit of commercial set aside for a future project. We worked really hard to make sure that there was a community space and a shelter there, and the engineering work to make all that work there. So there was a lot of effort put into the project, but it's not seen the light of day so far. There's been some challenges, but it's a good project. The staff feels like it's a viable project if there were, right developers, right money's involved, I don't know. But it was a good project. It is a good project. So we're kind of conflicted a little bit as to, do you extend the project on for another 12 months, recognizing, though, that we still have limited sewer. You all just granted a little over 10,000 gallons for this affordable housing project, which is great. So you can see where we could get back into the till 15,000 and allocate that to other projects that Elizabeth outlined in our memo. You see there's other people waiting in line to get sewer. With that said, there's been a lot of discussion with the property owner, real estate agent, the applicant who was going to build the project in the past, over the last couple of weeks. And if there was there's an ability to extend the site plan, the subdivision plan, the town plan, without sewer, they would be receptive to that. And once they had a viable project, a viable developer online within the next 12 months, they would come back to you all at that time, ready to build, and would ask for a sewer allocation at that time. If in 12 months they don't get it, then the plan just dies because of lack of being able to move forward within a 12-month period. So I think at one time staff was going to request, or was going to recommend, to let the plan die because the sewer is such a viable commodity that we have, and there's other projects in line. But this might be a good trade-off to allow the site plan to continue, but get the sewer back and have them come back before you all for an allocation when they are ready to move forward with the actual building permits. So totally up to you all. You can approve it for another 12 months with the sewer. You can approve it as a site plan only, and or do nothing. But those are a couple of options that would draw out there for you.
Jeff, I think you said the applicant was amenable.
Yes. Okay. We have a letter documenting that they are okay with just site plan approval, and do recognize that they will lose their sewer allocation and they will have to come back.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan extension without the sewer allocation.
Motion by Michael Fiocco.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Oh, well, second.
Seconded by Pamela Paulson.
Robert Rules of Order here.
Discussion, Mr. Bowden.
Trying to get a better understanding of the cube and our caps. Pull out my handy dandy graph. I don't know if Chris Beck, if you might be able to guys with the graph up on the screen. Oh, where is it? I may not be on the right-hand side right now.
I think what it does is it reduces the light green bar down just a little bit. Now tonight we've granted 12,000 gallons of sewer between two projects, so it's only going to slightly decrease by 3,000 or so to bring that sewer back. What we talked about at the retreat was that dark green bar and how that's the permitted allocation from the state. Tributaries from water. Right. And how that's the one we really need to watch really closely. So I think the result, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, is that green bar at the top, where we're getting closer to the 90% pool, actually is going to go down a little bit tonight, about 3,000 gallons or so. And then that affords us to give maybe 584 gallons to East Street business, or 300 gallons to an information center for Chatham Park or others.
The list you have within order of which I received the request.
Understood. Yeah.
The Cedar Lane that's on the back page at the time I wrote this was not approved, so it was still listed, but it has been approved tonight.
Got it.
Yep. So that does come off the list.
So, if we weren't to approve the motion just made, Ms. Goodson, and we did subsequently approve the CP Mosaic A 3500, the 584 GPD for East Street, the Dancy Subdivision 4,320, the Information Center 300, and we just did 24. We're not going to bump against the green line, the dark green line, correct? Where that tributary would not come into play.
No, we are still seeking allocated flow with all of them, and so that total graph would go higher, but the amount that measures against the 80% and the 90% rules is not affected today by that. Once they permit the flow and start using the flow, that is when that starts to adjust. So we've got some time. We've got to get this project out, but we have time that happens before the dark green, the bottom portion that is measured against that rule is adjusted.
Okay. Let me rephrase my question because I think I'm getting greater clarity here too. Everything on your memo, magic wand, we approve all of them. They get built out. Are we in jeopardy of having tributary hit the 90%?
If all of these plus everything else that we have granted paper flow to today,
yes,
all built out, and actually had the allocated flow be real, which normally is not exactly,
right,
then yes, we are approaching probably 90% or close to that.
approaching. We're not, your numbers don't have us exceeding that. Maybe I shouldn't put you on the spot.
Well, it's one of those that I think we possibly are exceeding the 90% in every single thing built out today with the allocation as listed in their request. What we are finding to be true is a lot of times that is some of these projects may not build out, or they build out and have less tributary flow in the end, but we don't know those things. We have these numbers into this yet. But the
Previewing our future policies.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, it's
That's
okay. Those are cool questions that we'll want to talk about at a future policy on allocation that we promised you all at the retreat. So in the next couple of meetings, we'll be talking about.
I guess I'm just questioning why we would need to pull it back at this stage.
Well, one, it's the site plan renewal is
sure. It's the opportunity.
It's the opportunity, and you could extend it for a period of time until such we got the policy adopted. But the applicant is okay with us pulling the sewer back, and we feel like that's probably the better way to go at the time. I don't like having projects without sewer being allocated either, so that's a trade-off. Generally, you'd like to have all projects that are approved by you all to have some sort of sewer allocation associated with that.
Would you want me to point at the
Yes,
graph
please.
while we
Just so
discuss?
we're all understanding exactly where we are.
So the information we are doing is in this lighter green area. We are increasing that. So yes, we could potentially touch or exceed the red line. But the state's requirements with the yellow and the red line are about this dark green. So unless all of this becomes actual flow at the plant, we are not in jeopardy of being in excess of what our state, or what the requirement would be with the state. So that reflects it. Several of those projects that are in that lighter green have multiple year build out, so it's not anticipated that they all would be real close tomorrow.
Are your questions complete? We have a motion and a second to approve the extension of the subdivision without the allocation. Is that the extent of it? those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. I believe we have reached the end of our old business and updates and commissioners' concerns are what lay before us. Why don't we start at Mr. Bonnet? John Bonnet?
No.
Would you like to express your...
Catch me off guard, Mr. Perry.
You know, we can't keep doing the same thing.
Oh, goodness. I'll be very more flustered now. Okay, so let's see. Heard from constituent. Mr. Petit has been very responsive to this constituent on Oakwood Drive concern, very small concern about street light. But the question, as I understand it, is in our court whether or not we're able or willing to send a letter to Duke Energy asking the street light be removed. And she claims that all the neighbors are in agreement, and the street light shines on her property more than on the street. So.
Are you directing this towards me? Or
yes.
Discuss?
Yes. I'm also just speaking to brief everyone about this. Mr. Grusebeck, is this something that you have any thoughts on, or would be willing to come back to the board on?
We can come back, certainly, because, and I'll tell you why. We haven't had any requests from neighbors to remove the street light. First of all, so I'm kind of confused about that. Second, we haven't actually refused to take the street light down. So
I didn't see that.
Okay, I apologize then. Third, we don't really have a policy for removing street lights.
Right.
So I guess that would be the third thing. Now, having said that, if the neighbors did approach us and say, can you take the street light down, we'd be more than happy to probably, policy or no policy, to probably approach that. But in cases like this, where one person wants a street light down and the others may or may not want that, which I've seen that go the other way more often than I have seen it go the way that you're reporting she's saying it's going. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
It's kind of where we're at. So, I mean, if we did in fact receive a request from all of her neighbors saying, please take the street light down, I think we would consider it
Okay.
due order.
All right. Has that been communicated to her?
I haven't had any. It's been Mr. Petit talking to her.
Okay.
I haven't had any opportunity to talk to her.
All right. Well, I'll let Mr. Petit handle that then. What news can we hear about the evacuation route in Powell Place?
Other than what we discussed last time.
Yeah. I had another conversation with another citizen resident of Powell Place who independently, she brought up the gas leak that historically occurred and her concern about the, she used the word dangerous, but how unsafe it made her feel. And at least when I cast my vote in favor of the apartment complex, I was hoping and expecting that we were going to get this done and build an evacuation route. So I'm eager to see more progress.
Okay. Like I said, when we last discussed it, I don't think we have full approval from all of the property owners that would be required for us to actually establish the evacuation. Second, are we sure, did the board actually make that part of the motion? You approved it? Is that just sort of a hope? An aspiration?
Because I think we had some problems with the land on the backside of 87. Easement and all like that when we're going to look into.
There's two property owners that you really have to cross to get out to 87. We talked to one, the home park. There is another one that he accesses through his mobile home park through a different property.
That's the private easement for his use.
I haven't looked at that.
I think that's what Mr. was saying last time. Yeah, and that easement doesn't necessarily provide for public use, but just the plan.
So that may not affect it, just being an emergency, which in the town that I lived, it felt like they just got one time.
So I think Jeff was saying, as we discussed last time, that this portion right here, I think, had some sort of unofficial tentative go-ahead, but we weren't sure.
There's a sort of like a triangle piece that runs along 87 that the mobile home park goes through. Their access goes through. He does not own, and I haven't looked at what that easement terms are. You have to negotiate with both property owners, I would think.
So let me ask that and challenge that assumption. If it's an emergency evacuation route, the only case in which it would be used would be in an emergency. Why would we need permission to cross the easement?
Because we're going to have to improve it.
We're not improving that section of the road. I don't think we need to. It's an emergency route. Well, we improved from the edge of Powell Place to the existing mobile home park road, but why would we need to improve the other road? I don't think we need to improve private property.
Well, we really have talked about if it's an emergency access, improving it to a standard that emergency vehicles could operate on.
I was thinking an evacuation route.
Yeah. I think that's all it's meant.
That's all that I'm thinking of here, is allowing residents to escape, even if it's over a pothole-ridden road in a mobile home park, gives them an evacuation route.
Yeah, I don't think it's intended like for emergency vehicles to get there soon.
So that is what we talked about last time, was emergency vehicles. So is it, I just need to be clear, is it an evacuation route or is it an evacuation route plus emergency vehicles evacuation?
If it's an emergency vehicles, you're going to it'll have to be up to state standards to handle the weight. And I want to see it get built. I want to see these folks have an evacuation route. That's
What I've heard neighbors say, I live in that neighborhood, what I hear people say is, if the road is blocked, they want to have another way out. I've never heard them say, oh, we might need emergency vehicles to get here, which is possible, but.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's just what you guys were saying last time.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to clarify.
I mean, we make that connection with one.
Typically, an emergency route allows for the incoming of emergency vehicles and exiting of personal vehicles. Because, I mean, when you said emergency route, or that is what that entails.
Maybe we just need to rename it evacuation.
So like, does that staircase go down?
So, I do have a question. That's the county. So, and that belongs, that second road is a private owner. So whether it's evacuation route or not, if he say you can't go on it, you still can't go.
We have to look at somewhere else if the goal to have some access. We don't have in writing anything that says we could use this. That's the first hurdle, is to figure that out. We've had a conversation with a owner. There may be multiple owners of that piece of property too that we'd have to. And there's a lot of legal things that would have to happen. And if it's anywhere along the line, someone could say, no, you're not doing that. So what happens then? Do you all just tell folks in South Lake, we're trying, and there's not going to be an access?
Let's cross that evacuation route when we reach that evacuation route. Jeff, I would like us to try and to be in the business of saying yes to when we can do things, we can solve problems, and I appreciate the work that's been done on it so far, and I'd like for it to continue. And
okay, have you consulted with your town attorney on the legal ramifications of doing that?
I've
I'm expecting Mr. Messick to speak up if he needs to.
I think there's a real problem. This is not in town. I don't know why you have any authority to build a street for any purpose outside of town. I mean, the developer can get an easement, can run to the homeowners association if you all want to facilitate that, but that would be the only way I can see that it's the town. I mean, the town can't own a street outside of town.
Why do we have to own it?
You have to. Somebody has to have an easement, the right to do it. If the town has an easement, then the public can use it. If the town has no authority to acquire an easement, then the towns can't do it outside town.
So the idea was it was going to have a barricade that could be driven through if there was evacuation. So it wouldn't be open to the public except if they were trying to evacuate.
You cannot spend public money on something that's not, you're not authorized to do. You're not authorized to do streets outside of town.
How about routes?
But the homeowners association, the homeowners association, did you say they could acquire the easement rights from the adjoining neighbors and that they could do it themselves?
Or the developer or somebody else other than town.
The other thing that I recall we talked about was that Powell Place does have 5 stub outs. And so there was talk about the time we were able to do this, that maybe that there would be one of these stub outs that could connect to something, but who knows?
Well, 3 of them, as I recall, go to the Cooper property. And the Cooper property is up for sale, but it is certainly not under development.
Yeah, I think we kind of went through feasibility survey of all of those options, and this was the one that seemed to have the greatest feasibility. I'm appreciative, Jeff, that you've contacted that landowner and that they're open to further conversations.
I think there's more than 2. I think there's 3 or 4 folks, and I don't think that the trailer park actually goes to the public highway. It goes to the old road that's roughly parallel with the public highway. I think there are lots of title issues involved in that. And until you get all of the property owners to agree to it, I mean, it really doesn't make any difference who's going to hold title to the easement. But I think there are a lot of moving parts. And like Ms. Baldwin says, all it takes is one to say no.
It might make more sense if there's some way to do it is to connect them to stub outs on the property, Danny Cooper's property. And at least that way, there'd be more than one way off. It's mainly Millbrook, that once you get back on Millbrook, that there's no other exit out. But if we were to somehow work it out with Danny Cooper,
I think I heard
to connect to
I have already
stub
spoken
outs.
with him. I've already spoken with him about that, and
It wasn't even open to a temporary road.
Because that would solve the issue of being in town or not being in town.
That's true.
Well, does it need further investigation? Or does it need to be turned back over to the homeowners association? If we're talking about the road going out to the west. It's late. Maybe we just need to bring it up again.
Okay. All right.
For me, the issue is what Mr. Messick was saying, that it's not in town limits, it's complicated. But I think it's important to have evacuation.
I'm wondering about that. I think that we've maintained East Cornwallis a couple of times, haven't we? Put gravel down or scraped it at no time in history.
And who does that then?
State.
Okay.
It's not the entire length of East Cornwallis, it's just that 1,700-foot section of it. Believe it or not, they have come out and graded it from time to time.
I think it is complicated because if it wasn't in the city limits, I could see that we could pursue it, but at this point, it's not in the city limits.
It's one of those things we need to remember that next time we look at a subdivision that only has one exit.
There are two
Okay,
exits.
which one are you to go?
It's not that direction.
No, we do have a stub. It just doesn't align with that part. There's a stub, so it was thought of that let's have interconnectivity, and I guess we have 5 stubs. One of them goes that way. It doesn't align very well with the existing.
I guess written originally, they're probably thinking that would be a road, that would be a straight road, not a windy or trailer park.
Maybe this is a conversation for another time, but I realize that this issue probably was exacerbated by the apartment project, but did this come up during the original approval process?
Well, I think so, in that there's a stub to the building property.
And they tried, they couldn't get on the side of the
I remember Bill Terry, when I first took the job, he drove me out there and he said, okay, this is where we talked about putting a stub, and there was some disagreement, I think, from the neighbors, and so it never, the neighbors actually didn't want a stub connecting to the trailer park.
They didn't want through traffic, whatever.
They didn't want through traffic. But that's just secondhand, I don't know how.
Well, eventually, 87 will connect with Block 64 is my impression, and connect with Chatham Park. So eventually, there will need to be a connectivity back there, but it's not something we can do yet because it's not part of the solution.
Okay. So, I think I emailed everyone regarding, yes, and Mr. Messick responded. Thank you very much, sir. Your thoughts on the tree ordinance legislation, Senate Bill 367. My question for the board, is this board in support of this legislature taking away more decision-making authority from local governments? Simple question.
No.
No.
Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in? Are we in favor of the legislature taking away more decision-making authority from local governments?
I've heard some others that what they're proposing is not all, yeah, it's not bad, but it is giving up control to municipalities.
Over 40 of their mercy, giving the construction.
We're in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Dillon rules.
What's the rule? The Dillon rule?
Dillon rule. All right. Thank you.
Sewer. I would like for us to make investments in our capital improvement budget for infill and inflow and infiltration. If we can fix our pipes, it's one of the most cost-effective way to increase sewer capacity at our plant.
I think we do have the asset plan in hand to be able to do that. So
I know we've done it twice. I think we've had grants and made some substantial investments, and it's helped a lot.
Yeah, really doesn't about like 30%.
Well, it's been such a wet year. Our plant has seen we've treated a lot of rainwater.
No, ma'am, not tonight.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Jay Farrell, second by Michael Scarpello. Those in favor, please.
All right, half an hour, half time. Yeah. There you go. Is this on the agenda electronic?
well, it was back in 2014.